Goodness gracious.
All right. All right. So today was a bit of a lull in the OCR space. We complain about it being too long of a season, but like if they could just like condense it, give us something every week to talk about, that'd be like much better. But in the meantime, we're gonna do a little bit of this and that for the episode today. Thinking about the CrossFit Games is going to be in about a week from today, and in the past couple weeks, some drug tests have been trickling in, and most notably, there's two gentlemen who failed: a guy named Phil Toon and another guy named Nicholas Joyelle, who are both going to be first-time Games athletes and a ton of Games competitors. Basically, every South American team, like I don't think they can send a team. I don't think there's one clean competitor in South America for CrossFit. But even though OCR and hybrid racing is not CrossFit, it's similar. It's like a cousin. So I think that like the conversation of PEDs in our world is somewhat interesting and just something to kind of roll out and talk about, because there's not a ton of conversation around it. And I was actually asked a question recently. I was doing a Q&A with Matt Davis on his Facebook group for hybrid training. And someone just straight up asked us, like, have you ever been tested at Hyrox? And the answer is no. Like, I haven't even thought about that until that moment that someone asked. So I just want to talk about it a little bit. So Kirk, I want to ask you first, because those tatas you have, unnatural looking. They have to have come from somewhere. But what do you think it is about PEDs? Why do you think people like use them?
Anytime somebody can cheat, oftentimes people will, right? Winning is all that matters. If you're not first, you're last. We're always comparing ourselves to others and wanting to be the best. And even if that means crossing some blurry lines, we will do that. And that's exactly why. If we can, we will. And we will, so to speak. So that's why. That's literally it. And if we're going to talk specifically in the realm of OCR, or if you want to talk CrossFit, OCR is so untested that why wouldn't you? Let's say that would be the justification. What are the ramifications?
If you're not cheating, you're not trying.
Bingo.
That's what I always say.
Yep.
But yeah, because it really isn't tested that often, so it doesn't seem like there is even consequence at this point. I mean, we've had maybe a couple, but and this is not about like kind of rehashing what has happened in the past, but just more kind of talking about like the reasoning that people might feel that way. Bracken, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think I have a bit of a reputation for being a very staunch anti-doping athlete, coach, individual. And so I don't want to be on the pulpit today. So I'm actually going to try to remove that portion from me and only talk with logic, no emotion.
Okay.
Now, if at some point it needs to pour out, it's going to pour out. But I think I'm just going to start by saying the opposite view of me, which is it's not illegal at most of these venues. Like this, we're talking about cheating and gray area. This starts in normal life. This starts in the gym. These CrossFitters share the same gym or box with all these everyday guys who are using it, and it's not cheating until a competition outlaws it. So is it different than using weight loss pills? Or is it different from overdosing caffeine to get through your day? Is it different from doing Botox or liposuction? No, it's just scientifically enhancing what the body naturally does. So that's the counter to it, is that most of these people who get caught were doing it before they were doing it for sport. Now, that's not making an excuse for them, but the everyday person, it's not cheating. It's just an enhancement, just like you would get an ED medication, or you would use ibuprofen to get rid of a headache. Like, it's not any different until it is. And that line, until it is the super important line in the sand. But it's not like most people leap over it. It's suddenly your foot's past it before you even realize you got to that line.
That's the biggest misconception with performance enhancing drugs. Steroid use is the common population actually believes that they are illegal by some measure for the mass pop. And they're actually not. You can go inject steroids into your butt cheek as much as you want without any legal consequence here in the United States. You can go take your EPO with a side of whatever Woodsy had back in 2017, and nobody's going to care until you start competing. And I think a lot of like the uneducated, not their fault, but they just think that these things are bad and that they're illegal for everybody, and they're not. But it crosses a moral line when it comes to competition and competitive advantage. I'm really glad you led with that, actually, Bracken.
Yeah, I don't want to, but it's the fact is that it is illegal to purchase anabolic steroids in the U.S.
Right. There's a legality point in that you can't like sell them.
But it's not illegal to use it.
Right.
So
listen, you can go in and get tested. If your testosterone's below 600, which is still in the normal range, somebody will give you some Androgel to rub on your chest, and pretty soon your T is above $1,000, no problem.
You take a drug test for a job. If it's not weed, if it's not coke, like you're fine. They don't test for it. But if anabolic agents came up, you're not disqualified from any job in America outside of maybe some sort of law enforcement or some medical situations. It's not illegal to use. And so when you have the gym bro who's using it and then goes to a DECA, that's where it gets blurry, because there are this whole population of people who set out to cheat in sport. It's abhorrent. I stand against it, but I'm trying to stay away from my emotional side. The biggest dopers are the ones who were using it before they found sport.
You guys go to the gym or have gone to the gym in the past. Like, I'm sure you've all heard just random conversations, just walking to the dumbbell rack or whatever, just people just openly discussing what they're on.
What's your gear, man? What's your gear, bro?
Exactly. Yeah. And it's all like code words and stuff, but it's like just freely discussed. It's kind of staggering.
I had a conversation with some guy the other day who was surprised that I wasn't on it. This wasn't anybody who was like in our space. And it was like, we're just talking about training and stuff. He's like, you're like not doing it? I was like, well, no, but thank you. I appreciate that. So that's the one thing about the testing part that is a little bit great. Or like Bracken, the people who you are alluding to, who may have gotten into this for physique purposes or just wanted to see what they could do with a little bit of help. And there was no reason for them to not to do it. Now, if they took a drug test, they would pass. Typically, right?
What do you mean?
Like if you like these things leave your system, so those people wouldn't get popped. I don't.
Everything has a half-life, and the way you take it and the amount you take and where you source it from determines that half-life. So something it's called like your glow period. What is your glow period for this? So how long will you glow for? How long will your blood be in a situation where it is glowing and it will set off a test? And for the general person, they don't care. So they might inject every day or mass amounts, and playing with that is when it becomes intentional. If you don't care if anyone tested you, you're not cheating. You're just enhancing yourself. If you're now trying to circumvent, that's where cheating comes into play, which that goes along the line with being tested, at which point there's a rule and now you're breaking the rule. But every single thing out there has a different half-life. Like smoking weed has a very long shelf life in your system. You can find it in your hair for a long time. Other things are in and out of your system the first time you urinate. So it's not a black and white answer.
Let's talk about the CrossFit Games athletes for a second then. So if this is the case and we have a glow period, you would imagine that anybody at that level of athleticism possibly qualifying for the CrossFit Games would be very well in the know and researched on what they are taking with intent. You would hope. Apparently not, according to Bracken's facial expression.
I doubt it.
However, so do you think like these positive tests are a miscalculation? Because then they would have either don't know the rules, didn't check the water regulations, or walked in knowing they were going to get popped. Or did whatever it took to qualify, and now they're just going to, I qualified for the games, and I knew I was going to get yanked. Like, how does it happen? How do they end up in that situation? They're morons?
I think that, go ahead, Jack.
I was going to say, it seems as if a lot of people during the off season, that's probably not when you're going to get tested. And that would be the time when a lot of them probably continue to go through their cycle or their regimen. And then during competition season, it's like, oh, well, now the testing's coming out. I better be a little bit more cautious. But I wouldn't be surprised if you were like the fifth person in your region to get in and 5 get in. It's like, I need that edge to actually, make sure that I make the CrossFit Games. And you're just walking the line a little bit too close at that point.
This is what happened to the guy, Nicholas Joyelle, who was out of, I think, the Granite Games, whatever it was in Canada. He was kind of in the top 10 for years. He's like 28, 29 years old. And at that competition, he won the first two events. He beat Patrick Vellner, who's, you know, one of the best CrossFitters for the past decade or so. And I had that thought. I was like, if there's anybody out there who's doping, it's that guy. And it came back, and he didn't even, he was apologetic, but he just accepted his ban. They do a 4-year ban in CrossFit.
Which is rare.
Yeah, he was just like, you know, I just have poured everything I possibly could have into the sport, and and it sounded like he just needed something else to see if he could get there. And he finished 5th, which is the last qualifier. So Jack is probably like what you said. He's probably just like, I'm just gonna see what happens. And on the other guy failed because there was like, I guess, Propecia for hair loss, right? And he is a balding gentleman. He's only 24, but he
high tea.
Yeah, I guess it's a masking agent. Like, so like if you have too much of that, it can kind of cover up other things and you fail.
So here's the deal. There are only 3 ways to get popped: ignorance, accident, or betrayal. Those are the only 3 ways it happens. Now, the easiest way that everyone claims is ignorance. When they get popped for Propecia or for any sort of something that isn't anabolic or EPO or HGH, if it's not blood-based or anabolic in nature, if they get popped for that, they immediately say ignorance. I didn't know. And for some people, that's true. But it's really, really not. If you ever see someone get popped for something adjacent to the drug, it's because it's a masking agent. So you don't take a masking agent unintentionally unless you truly like need that thing. So that would be the ignorance piece, and it's a small piece at that level. The ignorance comes from when you get popped. True ignorance is when you get popped for anabolic agents or you test positive for how many times does that even happen anymore? When's the last time someone got caught for EPO or anabolic agents? It's really foreigners. And that's because they truly either didn't know testing was coming or they don't know it's illegal, because in their local circuit, it's not. It's just what you do there. So ignorance gets you popped. I didn't know it was real, like that what you could get tested for, or I didn't know you were testing. Or accident is when you take too much in your glow cycle. The glow cycle is longer than you thought for your masking agent. You do everything right, you cover it up right, but you get that wrong and they catch you for that. So it's an accident. Or betrayal. Someone is tipped off. Someone in the gym's like, hey, test this person on a Wednesday. And boom, you get caught. You were doing everything right, but someone betrayed you. So those are the 3. But it's like red flag number 1 is, oh, you know what? I've just been taking this. I had no clue. It doesn't even give me any performance benefit. If they say that, they're lying, because a really innocent person would say, listen, this covered up steroids and I didn't know that and I took it. That's what you would say if you were innocent. You'd be like, holy crap, I didn't know that people use this to cover up EPO. I just took it for this. But the people are like, I had no clue. Like, well, you're a pro athlete. So anyways, ignorance, accident, or betrayal.
Yeah, the masking agent, you see that all the time, like in baseball. Once the Mitchell report came out or the early 2000s, I think Manny Ramirez got busted for something that, you know, affects your estrogen levels or something. And it's like, why would a guy be taking that? Like, and then he got tested positive again for another masking agent. And it's just super common from in a lot of these things, because they're just trying to cover up the effects of the main thing they're using, it seems.
Yeah. I'm very anti-doping as well when it comes to sport, of course, like you, Bracken. But the interesting thing about this, I think, is that usually it's guys that care, or girls, I suppose, that care so dang much, right? Like they are doing absolutely everything else in their power, sometimes at the top end of the sport, to achieve their best result. And they're realizing like it is not within their DNA sometimes. And then they're like scratching their heads how to do this. And they're so desperate to get what they desire, and they can't think of any other way to do it. And they resort to this. Now, I understand it's a culture in some boxes or in some realms, but I do think like I don't know. Sometimes it's the last box people realize they need to check. And it's a little unfortunate because it's people who have really good intentions, who have dedicated their life to a craft, realize they're not going to be on the top, and then sort of turn to the dark side, so to speak, because they deserve it, because they've been working hard, because it's their time. And they're not going to see it be their time unless they do this one thing that they haven't done yet. And I saw, Rich, you were shaking your head, so maybe you disagree, but that is one of my takes with some of the situations. I understand how it came about.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very positive way to kind of put that. And I think that maybe these athletes do think that they've done everything in their capabilities to maximize their potential, but chances are they haven't. You know,
well, right, of course.
Yeah, that they're like, I need to do this, and like really, there's so many different steps in terms of commitment and what they can do and what's actually within their control. But they see this one thing that they know is going to work, and when you see other people or you hear it, like that's where I can see and I can sympathize with people who do take performance enhancing drugs because they think everyone else is doing it and that they're at a disadvantage, right? It'd be like
it's like the Tour de France, how everybody assumed everybody else was on it.
Well, even just like
they were, I think, for a little
bit. I know, yeah.
But it's like even a more like harmless example is alpha flies, right? If everyone at the starting line is going to have alpha flies, I'm going to get some alpha flies, even though these shoes might make me perform better. If everyone else is already performing at that level, like why wouldn't I get these? And I think that's how people kind of convince themselves that it's okay, that it's like necessary.
And Jack, you're right. That was the narrative on the kind of the reset of the tour, is that bunch of people were popped. It got somewhat cleaned up. And then Lance was so hyper focused that everyone else was doing it, that we're going to do it better. And then it turned out that it wasn't as rampant as he thought. Other years, yes, it was, but allegedly it wasn't as rampant. But that thought of everyone else is doing it, they are cheating me, I'm going to at least level the playing field. That's a logical reaction. But it doesn't change the fact that you're intentionally cheating.
Yeah, and when you're at that level, I mean, what's the most you're really looking to improve? Like everyone's pretty much along the same level, plus or minus a couple percent. Even the best of the best aren't that much better than the next, but it looks like it because they're winning. If PEDs are going to get you that extra 1-2%, and you assume everybody else is on it, it's like, oh well, that'll help close the gap. And I think a lot of people are willing to make that risk, especially when prize money's involved. That's my guess why a decent amount of people go after it as well.
So how about this for a moral like explanation to kind of get into it? Like, right, like we talked about, Bracken, you mentioned the 3 different ways that people might fail these drug tests, and like they're fairly sophisticated, but they can be kind of figured out, right? You can, and you always hear that thing. It's like, it's not a drug test, it's an IQ test, right?
Correct.
And so as I was thinking about this, I started to kind of consider what the testing means. And if you don't fail the test, are you cheating? Like, what are they testing for? Like I think I could wrap my head around that. It's like, well, the test, I'm clean. I'm not cheating, because if I was cheating, it would show up on this test. Like, so I think there's people who could take drugs and just simply think that they are doing it under that's like an illegal sense for competition.
Justified.
Yeah. I was clean in that moment. They tested me in that snapshot. Humans are masters at justifying things. So yeah, I'm sure you could come up with any scenario that a human being could justify because they already have. Think of the worst atrocities in the history of mankind, and someone did it with the best of intentions. But I don't buy that.
Because it seems like there's these loopholes in these drug tests.
The moral loopholes happen when it's no longer about sport, in my opinion. Kirk, you and I have talked about this before, but when a 300,000 world marathon major prize money bonus buys electricity and running water for your village for the next 5 years, that's not about sport. If you don't have a better option to earn money to change the life trajectory of people in your family or around you, that's not sport. That's occupation. And every one of us would do something illegal to save our family. That is non-negotiable. We would all do that. The difference is, in first world countries, you do not have no other option. That doesn't exist. Any one of us could go pick up a factory job or a manual labor job anytime we wanted and make enough to support a small family. So that's why I give more pass to athletes from certain countries. Either it's state sponsored, where you don't have a say when your government tells you to do it. And B, It's life-changing. You can't get out of poverty until you get a medal. I would do that too. But first world countries do not get that moral pass.
Because there's definitely athletes who are doing it. I think that was probably one of the biggest reasons for people to use PEDs, even here domestically, is to get some good results, get a good following, and then be able to monetize their following from it. So I'd imagine that is something that a lot of people kind of run through as well. Like these CrossFitters have huge followings who aren't even games level athletes, and they're probably still making some money or being able to at least be able to meet the needs of their lifestyle. But the monetary purposes, I think, where do you think that, like, I wrote down a couple of reasons, like improving performance, win at all costs, kind of what Kirk was saying, like improve your confidence as a person by being able to perform well. Like that's kind of the same thing. And the monetary reasons are maybe a second one. And maybe there's one or two other ones that I might be missing for why people would take steroids or take performance enhancing drugs. Like, how would you stack these up? Are there any good reasons, or how many, like, where does it kind of break out? Like how many people are taking it just to say that they were on a podium?
Well,
I think it's
most of them.
Yeah. I was just going to say on that monetary cost, I was just curious, how much like would a monthly regimen of this cost? Like what's the cost benefit analysis? Say I have no idea what it is, but say it's $1,000 a month. Like, are you actually going to get a return on your investment by doing this? Is it worth the risk at that point? Like, I genuinely have no idea how much this stuff would cost.
Maybe down
I'll
the road.
answer that, but I want to hear Kirk's initial reply first, what you were going to say.
Oh, it's ego. It's 100% ego. Most of these people are never going to be on a podium. Most of these people are they just want to be big fish in their small pond at their CrossFit box or their OCR gym. They want to walk around at the beach with their shirt off feeling good. They want to outrun their run club, even though they're a 21-minute 5K will never be on the world level. Now they're a 19:30 5K. There's people, the majority of people who are doping, whether it's in the anaerobic or aerobic space, are absolutely doing it for ego. All of these sports are ego-driven. All of this is for self-worth and self-confidence and recognition, even on the smallest level. Acknowledgement. That's why people are doing this. And most of them aren't even getting that on any sort of stage we're talking about. I think the majority of people are doing it for their daily life, their self-perceived worth. That's what I think is happening.
Yeah.
The ones I know who have done it, by the way, because I've been in the gym space for a while, and not necessarily in the endurance space, but every single one of them that I know, pretty much you couldn't really justify it by like the layperson's understanding. Like, why are you doing this? What are you doing this for? They're not on any world stage. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But they sure like going chasing chicks out on a Friday night and filling out their t-shirt. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah. And in the cost thing, it is a sliding scale. If you can afford a cell phone plan in this day and age, you can afford a doping regimen that will make you better. Now, there are levels to everything, but a lot of what you pay for is guaranteed quality and guaranteed glow times. That's what you're paying for from, the Ferrari and from Balco. For those people, you're getting designer drugs, and that's important because you can only test for what you know. It's not like it's one of those science fiction devices where they scan you and it says everything that's in your system. It has to trigger a response, and that snare can only be set if it knows what it looks for. Mm-hmm. Think of it like hunting. If you're snaring at ground level, you don't catch anything that's flying above that. That's how these tests work. And so if you're paying for someone to change the final little tail on a branch chain of something, that no longer sets off the parameters of that snare. So that's what you're paying for. You can get the same efficacy of results off much cheaper options, but your chances of getting popped rise. But if you're willing to put in the research yourself, or you're in a place where you're not going to get tested, like if you get caught at a Spartan race, you're an idiot.
You are a fool.
And you're unlucky. You can be an idiot and just be lucky. Like they probably won't test you anyway. So you could get away for the cost of a cell phone plan a month, especially if you want to drive across the border and source from Mexico or source from anywhere that has lighter standards. You may not always, like every third might be a dud that you get, but it is not insanely expensive, especially if you go through a doctor. You can get testosterone prescribed. You can get thyroid medication. You can have all sorts of inhalers prescribed. And if you're on your state sponsored healthcare, it's going to cover it all.
Yeah, and it seems like you pay when it gets expensive, you're kind of paying for the knowledge of someone else. Like you mentioned, the people who are creating the designer drugs, which is kind of what Marion Jones was, what she got hit for. She was just like passing these tests until they figured out a way to grab them because it was a synthetic drug that wouldn't show up on these tests. And there's other people who might be have like a bodybuilder background who might be able to kind of tell you what to take and how much to take and when to take it. Chances are, if you're going to do it by yourself, you're probably going to screw it up because it is like a fairly sophisticated kind of situation on when to kind of come on and off. So I'd imagine that a lot of people who are at least domestic, who their healthcare might not cover it, or if they are kind of having to kind of some backdoor deals, they're probably just goofing it up right from the start.
And just to add on to
is lab expertise, where the good ones, if you're committing 6 figures or more to this program, they're going to bring you and figure out your personal half-life reaction to the drug. Like it's not going to be, if all 4 of us take the same amount of testosterone, it's not going to be the exact same in our systems. If we all take EPO, we're not going to have the same exact half-life. Like you're going to get a close approximation, but these people will dial in your microdosing schedule that if you have this before midnight, they're not allowed to come between the hours of, 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. I believe that's the testing window. I could be slightly wrong on that. But if you take it at 11:01 p.m., it will be out of your system by 5:59 a.m. guaranteed, because we have tested that on you and your metabolism and your body composition. That's what you're paying for.
I can speak to 2 things on a personal front in regards to testosterone use. Back in college, I'd gotten pretty sick and my testosterone was down low, right? I just got done graduating. My testosterone was so low, it was at 37. Yes, you heard that right. 37. Okay, so I got a prescription for Androgel, which is something you rub on your shoulders, your upper back, or your stomach, of all things. It absorbs into your skin and it increases your testosterone level. It's that simple. It's odorless, clear, looks like you would never know what it is, right? For perspective, this is 2006. I was out of college, wasn't competing. This wasn't for performance enhancement. The cost of that, not under insurance, was about $700 every 2 weeks. Again, I was insured. And in a month, my testosterone went from 37 to 1,250. I gained 18 pounds in 6 weeks, and I didn't touch a weight. Just what life did to me. For example, I don't know how that relates to this conversation, but I can tell you how impactful it was at the time. And then I only was on it for 3 months, got off, and my levels have been somewhat normal ever since. So my body self-regulated. But that's the power of what these drugs can actually do. I mean, 37 to 1250 on a normal dose. I gained almost 20 pounds of pretty much lean mass. I was doing a little weightlifting, but not like these guys are training. That's what it did to me. And that's pretty powerful perspective.
Kirk, on that note, not saying, the trickle down effects or anything, since you said that was like 2006, but what are your thoughts on, I did it in the past that allow me to achieve another level in the future? Like some people, we kind of alluded to it, where they're on an off-season program and then they don't touch it for 4 months. So they can justify, well, I wasn't on it right now, but it gives you the ability over time to kind of do extra performance. You were like a critically low level, obviously, there, and you weren't doing it for performance benefits. Like, what's your moral thought on that?
I wish I had perspective, because I wasn't training at the moment. So I don't even know what my metrics were. And then they were significantly down for years on all fronts after I'd gotten sick from previous like college metrics. So I have no idea. It took me years to get back to like any sort of performance that was respectable. And it was years after stopping that. So I don't really know. All I know is my body still responded to something without a whole lot of training, and no, training definitely is important, but I don't know. I can't speak to that. And that's what, like 16 years ago now. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No, I was just mainly saying, like, say that someone did it for 4 months and then they stopped, and then they're like, well, I wasn't on it now. Like, you still got some benefit from it then. And I'm talking like maybe a CrossFit level athlete or Olympic runner or something like that.
I will say, so I had gone from 138 pounds up to about 155, 156. And after I got off of the Androgel, I started feeling a little better, started hitting the weights afterwards. And I did maintain that weight and then built up to my current weight of 172, I think it was the other morning. So I didn't like all of a sudden lose the muscle mass that my body miraculously put on. I can tell you that much. So in that regard, I can tell you that worked. But again, it was a 3 or 4 month stint back in 2006. So who knows?
Yeah. So Kirk, from your experience, like, right, you felt the power of what these things can do, and you paint a good picture of what they could do. So has there been a time in all of our athletic careers where this has maybe been a consideration, and like what made you guys not take it when considering that, if you didn't take it?
I'm going to chime in one more time, and then I'm going to let the other fellas speak on this, because I wasn't doping for performance enhancement. I was literally doing this to feel like a human again, right?
Yeah.
I think it's worth noting, because not everyone knows your backstory, that you went through a black mold issue and you were like in and out of hospital and health issues for over a year before this happened.
Super sick. And they found a tumor on my pituitary gland, which they thought was affecting my testosterone production. This is a long time ago. Anyways, that wasn't it. But when you go on that stuff, like I will say, like my testosterone now is on the low end of normal, and I choose for it to be there now. I don't want to go back on because of what it makes you feel like. Like people don't understand that haven't done it, what it does to you. Like it makes you like an exaggerated version of yourself. If you're super outgoing, you're going to be like this insanely annoying outgoing person. If you're super analytical, it like enhances all of your character features. And I mean, I was getting up at 3 a.m. and crushing like a dozen Krispy Kreme donuts because my body went crazy. Like it got flooded with this sort of like, it was like a monster was inside of me, and all these side effects. Like walking around in sweatpants wasn't really an option for me in a while, guys. Like it was pretty intense. And like things like the acne and other things were like, honestly, my body was in such disarray with all of that shoved at it that for me, if I didn't have like a performance cost that went with it, like I directly am like, I was doing this to feel better, got my normal levels up. I don't think I would go back. Like you couldn't pay me enough to go back unless like my life like depended on it, because those side effects are very real and I did not enjoy them whatsoever.
And what you're talking about is an anabolic agent, right?
An anabolic agent
to help growth, which isn't always something that is going to be, especially in the endurance space, as a performance enhancing drug. Maybe I could see it for hybrid racing, OCR for sure, if you want to put on some muscle mass without in a shorter amount of time. When we're talking about other performance enhancers, which it could be some sort of fat burner or like an EPO that's going to increase like your red blood cell count, that's going to help your endurance. That's not that you might not get that same physical response that the anabolic thing was going to give you, but you'll get better at OCR.
Before we move on, I kind of want to piggyback off what Kirk said, because our testosterone numbers are interesting. We've talked before that I'm high testosterone, but my number is 13.0. I'm between 13.05 and 13.09 for the past 9 years, which is high enough to the point that the person who tested me most recently told me to go tell my doctor to stop prescribing testosterone to me.
Nice. Good
Which
for you.
I said, I'm sure everyone tells you this, but I'm not. And then they got concerned and wanted to test for tumors and medical issues because it's just so rare to be this high. But I don't walk around feeling like Superman. And this is one of the arguments from people is I'm just getting back up to normal. But I sit at 1300 and Kirk got up to 1250, and we do not have the same life experiences. It's about what you add to it. Picture let's say weight room training, a 200-pound man and a 150-pound man. If the 200-pound man does nothing but the barbell, and the 150-pound man does the barbell plus 50 to get up to the 200-pound man, who's going to see a bigger increase in their workouts? The person who's adding more to what they already have.
Right. Okay.
So, I mean, that's a loose analogy, but the fact is, if you go from 30 to 1250, you're going to feel different. If I sit at 1250, this is just what I've grown up with. So I've had some benefit of having higher testosterone. But when people say, oh, I take EPO to get my hematocrit level up to 38, because everyone sits at 38 naturally, and I was a 24 because I was training so hard. The 24 to 38 level was going to make you feel like Superman at like 2 hours into a steady state ride, where the person who sits at 38 naturally doesn't get a boost. So the whole talk about leveling the playing field, I don't buy it, because there is no such thing as a level playing field in nature. You're used to what you're born with, and anything that enhances that is absolutely a benefit.
That's it's interesting, just like perspective, right? Like it's what your reality is, your reality.
And I benefit from it, but I don't feel the boost because there is no boost to me.
Your photos get that boost during the race, looking yoked.
You better believe that.
I'll tell you that much.
Curse the shame.
What
Well,
so why
Stop it.
Yeah, no, let's not get too carried away. So why wouldn't you do PEDs, Bracken?
Part of it is, I mean, I've been tempted. I reached out to a guy that I went to high school with. He has since become a huge power lifter. And he's part of this really intense powerlifting gym that's invite only, like the old school Western barbell type stuff. And I reached out, and no, actually he reached out. I posted about my first High Rock experience where I just said, listen, I'm not strong enough. I ran into that issue, and he said, hey, I talked to the guys. You can come by the gym if you'd like. We will be happy to work with you on your strength, and we'd be happy to help you with anything else you need to boost your power up. And I was like, here's the thing. I'm going to be natty. Like, that's the only option for me. He's like, yeah, I mean, if you don't want to get on gear or whatever, that's fine. But like, it will absolutely work for you. So like that interaction happened. And then when I was training in Colorado, there were 2 athletes that lived near us who, now this is secondhand, but someone who lived with them found vials in their room. So like it was secondhand knowledge that 2 athletes that were in our sphere were actively doping. And at that time, it was like, man, that makes me so mad. I want to crush them, and I don't know if I can. But I know that the thing that could do it is like these moments have been there. But I didn't do it because I didn't want to be a hypocrite. You know, how hypocritical would it be if I popped after years of like browbeating and just like proselytizing about the evils of you can't compete in sport if you dope? And I've said, like, if you have any history in the past of doping, you're disqualified from ever doing it again. I've taken hard lines on it. So that was the biggest, well, probably one of 2 biggest reasons. And the second is I just don't know how I would be able to look at the people around me and myself if I had ill-gotten gains, because I've seen my ceiling. I feel like I've seen my ceiling and I would know the difference. But maybe that's just arrogance speaking, that I haven't been in a place desperate enough to do it, and I'm not able to see that world.
I bet Wisconsin has some amazing power lifters. You're just like crushing milk, staying inside all winter, just deadlifting.
One other thing, I know it's someone else's turn to talk. I'll be done for a while after this, but the other reason I didn't is I had a buddy in college who was a wide receiver on our football team, and our football team was just notorious for being good and for being roided out. We were a D3 program. They're a powerhouse. And he used steroids for like 2.5 years. And he struggled with drinking and with actual rage issues during this. And he was not an aggressive guy. And he had his girlfriend complain to him, and he was like borderline. He'd get aggressive with her and he was drunk. He was never physical, but we were starting to be like, man, something's got to change. And he stopped. And he went into a depression and body dysmorphia afterwards. He said, I went from walking around feeling like Superman, I'm going to run through a brick wall, to a shell of myself. And I watched him take 2 years to get out of that funk. And I'm assuming to this day, he's not totally over it. And so knowing that no matter what I attain in my sphere is not big enough to justify what I'm going to have to go through on the other side when I'm done. That was just seeing that firsthand experience was like, I'm going to walk around and feel like a skeleton of my former self as soon as I stop. And I felt that with caffeine, and I felt that with, big lift workouts when I back away. I don't want to rely on that. And it would be like the biggest reliance ever.
It's like Latimer from the program, old school.
Exactly. Thank you.
Gotcha. Jack, what about you? How come you haven't doped up? If you haven't, I don't know.
I absolutely haven't. I think more, a lot of people think of the short-term gains. I would be really afraid of like the long-term ramifications. And I feel like distance runners and endurance athletes are always looking way down the road. We're not trying to take the shortest path to get somewhere, because we know there's a process to get to where we want to be. And just taking PEDs is a shortcut. It's just like having a copy of last year's test for the for some course in college. Like, oh yeah,
I would do.
That sounds amazing.
But what I was going to say is, sure, you may have got a good grade, but later in the real world, if you actually need to use that, you just kind of studied to the test and didn't really learn the process get ahead. And I get it. Like that's a different analogy. But also a lot of this stuff, you don't know the health risks associated with it. Like if you're taking a designer drug, you are subject zero on that thing. You don't know what's going to happen later on, like 20, 30 years from now. What you see all these NFL players and who are dealing with CTE and just their bodies are messed up, and roid rage, like you were mentioning before, Bracken, and people only look at during their physical prime in their 20s and 30s, but you have a lot of life left after that, and it just doesn't seem like it would be worth it. And just also, like, I know the work that it takes. I'm not on your guys' level, but I know the work that it takes to get to a certain point. And if there was someone same ability level, and it's like that took a lot of effort to get there, and then I just suddenly got 2-3% better, it's like I'm just kind of insulting the effort that they put into it. So I don't like that aspect of it either. You didn't earn your way.
Have you never cheated on a test?
No.
Not once.
No. Not even the eyeglasses test.
I cheated my way through college and halfway through high school.
There were
I think I have it in me.
There were a lot of people who got busted in one of my classes in college, and a couple people got kicked out of university entirely because of it.
Did you shame them?
Yeah, no, I didn't shame them, but I was like, I'm not getting involved in this stuff. But
I believe that you have never doped, Jack. From that,
I cheated in the worst class you could cheat in. My freshman year, I went to a Baptist university, and I cheated in history of Christianity. Like
take that.
Other than cheating on like the bar exam, I don't know if there's a worse moral class to cheat in.
So, Bracken, your case is looking a little more fuzzy. Jack, we believe your case for sure.
How about you, Rich? We'll let you finish it off.
I think it's kind of more belief in what I have been given in terms of like talent or work ethic, that I just don't think that I necessarily need to do that. Like if I can turn all the things the right way and kind of see what I can maximize myself, I don't necessarily know if I have ever gotten to that point. Like there's a lot of stuff I got to do to clean myself up in general before I really get to that point where it's like, well, now the answer is performance enhancing drugs. And I think there's always going to be stuff like that. Because I believe in my ability to do well. Not necessarily looking for other things. There's probably been a time where I've been vulnerable, maybe in or around the college where things just weren't going that well, where I could have, and I may have just been a little less mature, that I could have seen myself going that route, but I just never sought it. I just never sought it out. I never, like the monetary thing was always a barrier for me if there was a cost associated to it. But I honestly just never learned enough about it because I never felt like it was going to be that necessary.
I think the come down from it, or the aftermath that Bracken spoke about, is sort of the biggest elephant in the room when it comes to it all. I know two people who are on steroids, and out of both of their mouths, I know I'm on this for the rest of my life, because there's no going back. They are committed emotionally, even if it isn't as that high of dosages. They understand to keep their physique and to feel how good they feel, so to speak, in air quotes, that they need to be on this for the rest of their life. Both understand that if they want to feel the way they feel. Now, I'm not going to name names, but I have one person that some of us may or may not know that was on it very heavily back for sports reasons back in the day, college, just post-college, and is now no longer on them. They've been off for maybe 10 years. And the body dysmorphia that Bracken spoke about will never go away for this person. And reality has sunk in. They had decided, like, this is not good for my long-term health, and they will always feel like a former shell of themselves, and that has not gone away. It is infused in their life from the time they get up to the time they go to bed, all because they chose to make a decision for 6 years of their life in college, post-college, went off. They can't maintain their body composition anymore like they would like to. It takes an excessive amount of work to maintain what they would consider an acceptable body image. You won't see them with their shirt off anywhere for the rest of perpetuity. And the ramifications are super, super serious on that other end of it. And so, like, that's something that people don't necessarily talk about. And the two that I spoke about understand that, here's the deal. I made the deal with the devil, and I'm going to go dance with him for the rest of my life, and that's how it's going to be. And one chose to move on from that. And this person lives a very happy, so to speak, successful life. Don't get me wrong. But in that one aspect, that will never be the same for him. And I feel for him. so to speak. So that speaks to that notion that Bracken had brought up about the other side after that decision has been stopped. And now we're in a whole different realm here other than performance enhancement. But I just wanted to say that before we moved on.
The Latimer effect. That's real.
They deflate.
Yep.
You can watch this deflation process happen. And it is really obvious to the outside. So imagine what it's like to the person who's watching themselves deflate.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard. And then, there's someone in this sport who deflated over the course of years in order to clean up their act. And then, as a master's athlete, got back on the gear. Started talking about all the peptides they were taking and this whole cocktail, this sluice of everything that was going on. And they looked 10 years younger, and they had that you can't pass the eye test at some point. You defy what the natural look for a stud at your age is. And it's right back up. The deflation happened, and then they reinflated.
Looking like Liver King out there. What about
He's a
like
good follow, by the way. He's a good follow.
I won't do it. What about EPO though? Like I feel like we're talking about a lot of anabolics here. Like, do you get that come down? Because that only lasts. I was doing my minimal research, and if you take what I'm saying and you're like, oh, that sounds good, I'm gonna take it. You're a fool. I think it only stays in your system 3 to 4 days and lasts 3 to 4 weeks. The
from what I understand, that is something that you will only feel from the inside once you're getting to work, right? Like you're not going to notice that from the outside until you're 20 minutes deep into your threshold run or you're pushing the gas. I think that's going to be, which I'm sure will affect your sense of self, of course, but I don't think externally and not that that's what you're asking, but
yeah, it is. It sounds a little bit better. That comes down to
altitude. It's synthetic altitude. And what does altitude do for you? You don't walk around feeling like a different person. You sometimes even feel worse when you start a warm up or a race or a fast race. People come down from altitude and they actually lose some of their get up and go a little bit. But where altitude kicks in is when you're grinding. It kicks in at threshold. It kicks in an hour into a 4-hour race. It's when you're feeling the same red warning lights flashing. And this is speaking from experience. The first time I felt it was in Montana at a NBC race. And I was like 20 minutes into a race getting dropped and my thighs were full of blood and my heart rate was going. And I'm like, this is it. And then I pushed harder and then I pushed again. And there was still something there. That's what EPO, by all accounts of everyone I've ever read about or heard talk that used it, that's what it is. You think, this isn't working.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's more when you push.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had to talk with athletes about this who are altitude responding currently, that you're going to think it's not working. You just have to take the risk of push the gas pedal down again. And Lance has described that. Hamilton has described that. All these people who get caught, they say that when it clicks, you feel like Kenyans look running, but when it's not clicking, you feel heavy, but then you just have more staying power.
And this is a drug that we would see more prevalent in the endurance space. I don't think anabolics, like I said, maybe just from people who, again, like
anabolics have a place.
There's a place,
recovery.
For sure. And I think that would be in the
I shouldn't say they
CrossFit
have a
space.
place. There's a logical use.
In your cocktail mix-up, there's a certain place for those anabolics. But EPO is probably something we'll see more likely in our sport.
Yeah,
well, I think that would be, anything like an EPO would be, I think, a much larger return on investment in almost every realm, even the high rock space. Let's be honest. This is a 60+ minute effort. Here we've been spending all this time talking about steroids, when really like anything that would change somebody's real game would be on the aerobic front, which would be in that realm. So what I was curious about this in regards to this, because I want to bring this to OCR because I think we should. And I'm sure, Rich, you have a way you want to direct this ship, but I think like bridging like transition from CrossFit to now like OCR, where are athletes even at risk anymore of getting in trouble with this? Like, where does that risk even lie anymore? When was the last time any high-end athlete was tested? Because if I'm not mistaken, it wasn't at Spartan Race World Championships the last few years. What was it, OCRWC years ago? Did they still do that? Where's the risk actually lie?
I can tell you.
Okay.
So 2 years ago, right before, I think it was 2019, they had the Middle East, North Africa regional championship. Some guy won, Mohamed Mira, and he beat Sergey Perelgin, who got second at Worlds, was with Atkins till the final descent in Abu Dhabi. He beat Sergey by like 10 minutes. And this guy's a 210, 212 marathoner, just dominating people. Showed up early in COVID, ran a couple races, and I was like, okay, this guy's my dark horse pick to win. Then COVID, everything got shut down. And then 2021, they still had some races. They started to come back in the Middle East. And I was like, where is this guy? That's weird. He keeps posting all these pictures of Spartan training and all these highlights, but he's never in the results, even though there are races in his hometown. And I just randomly just had a hunch. I'm like, I'm just going to type in WADA after his name. And I looked it up. I went on the Athletes Integrity Unit. I think that's the name of the website. And his name popped up. And he basically ran the 2020 Dubai cross-country championships. And the reason he failed his doping test was because of evasion. So he got busted at a non-OCR event. And that's the only reason why he's not able to race until 2023 or 2024. And then I passed that information to Dave Watson and some other people. And they're like, he's not going to be able to race Spartan until his doping ban is up.
So what kind of problem do we think it is in our space if they're not going to test anybody? Like this guy is a high level runner in another space, and then maybe it's not that surprising, but is it a problem because we're not testing for it?
Well, I guess objectively, when has the last drug test been performed in a Hyrox, Deca, Spartan, any other OCR space that we know of?
Probably not in the 2020s.
OCR Worlds, right?
Not last
they
year.
didn't even do it. Like they're even inconsistent with it, correct?
I think it's a spending thing, right? It's like kind of expensive to test athletes.
So the last time we know would be in the teens, and,
Yes.
and maybe only OCR WC. Has Spartan did test for the national series in like 2018, maybe?
They did a random one at Utah, a surprise one.
But with no consistency, if I'm correct. Like I'm not missing something here.
They talked about it's going to be at national series and it's going to be random, and it didn't happen for a year. They had one at Utah. They've allegedly had it every year in Tahoe, but I only know of 2 years for sure that they pulled people aside, and we don't know what happened. We don't know if they even sent a sample in. There's been no transparency with it. That's not a shot at them. That's just saying we actually don't know.
They might not have actually tested it.
Pay the Blink 182 nurse to show up, collect some pee, and then just throw it in the urinal afterwards. Nobody's looking.
Non-emotionally, trying to keep my rage quitter self under control. It's a huge problem in our sport.
Yeah, you've done great for like 50 minutes. Just like let it fly now.
I'm not going to let it fly. I'm going to try to be logical here. Our sport is comprised of what adjacent sports? Like if you had to say, who is in our bubble? Who's closest to us?
CrossFit.
What did you say?
Running, cycling, and CrossFit. Probably.
Running, cycling, CrossFit, triathlon, mountain running.
Historically very clean sports at the top.
I mean, we combine the lifting world, the endurance world, the multi-sport world, and the gym bro life. I don't think you could get a more potent mix than that. And if there is cheating at every level of all of those, and our athletes came sourced from those, the odds are that the same spectrum, that bell curve of life, applies to ours. Age group triathlon is notorious for people cheating with nothing on the line. Take a look at the podium pictures and the start line pictures of that 40 plus, 50 plus start line. And there's a lot of people who don't pass the eye test. All I'm saying is that if it happens in every sport that we come from, why would our sport be immune? It would be less logical for us to be clean than it would for us not to be clean.
Do you think that the adding of age group podiums and the age group division has resulted in more people taking PEDs, or do you think that they were taking it beforehand? Or do you think that now the reason they can show up and they can be on that stage and take that cool picture on the podium, they can sort of justify it to themselves?
Everybody can justify it to themselves, I suppose, can't
If you don't fail the test.
Yeah.
My guess is the numbers are relatively even. I think for every person who saw, well, Jimbo over there, we all know what he does, and I'm not going to beat him without. Every person who's had that thought process and started is probably balanced out by the people who are like, listen, I've been doing it as a bro for the last 10 years, but now there's something on the line I probably shouldn't anymore. I would assume there's a bit of a give and take there. My hope is that it hasn't exploded in popularity, but I mean, it happens in the locker rooms. Guys compare what they're taking and not taking. It's got to be happening at the beer tent afterwards with these age groupers, you know?
Is it a problem if it's age groupers too? If it's running rampant amongst age groupers, like, is that as big of a problem as the highest level athletes in CrossFit or in cycling? Like, doesn't matter as much.
With nothing on the line other than,
well, there's no money on the line.
It's a competition and you don't get anything for it.
All you're doing is taking away someone's photo opportunity. You're not taking away their livelihood.
You're not taking away any OCR person's livelihood either, unless they're living in the same house in Canada.
I mean, there has been a case for people being able to support a lifestyle to a certain extent. And CrossFit, like how CrossFit is too, like, and whatever you can do with the following that you make from the success that you've been given, that you've experienced, like, then it feels like the person who would be taking drugs is kind of taking their spot. Where an age group, it's like, yeah, I mean, you guys are all going to go work your 9 to 5 anyway.
My take is that every person who takes the start line experiences the same race. It just matters how fast you get done with it. But everyone experiences the same race, and at their core are getting the same thing out of it. And so to me, if we're saying that age groupers, elite, open waves are all there on an equal mentality playing field in terms of what you experience on the race day, then you're at the same risk for cheating if you're cheating. Course cutting in age group is same as course cutting in elite.
Sorry to cut in. I would argue that being a coach, I guess, Bracken, Rich, you're both coaches as well. I suppose, Jack, you are, right? Yancey Camp?
Yeah, to a degree.
To a degree. I would say that a lot of my age group athletes and some of my trying to get to the next level elite athletes live this life in and out, I'm going to say, significantly more than I do. Even though, and not saying I'm the best of the best, because I'm not, but I would say they're more emotionally committed than I am. They're more physically committed. They're more, financially committed than I am. Exactly. So I would say, just from my small sample size, the ones who take it serious enough to hire a coach, they're all in, whether they're begging for a top 10 in an age group or a podium. So I would say, yeah, I think it might even be worse what Bracken posed as far as like what's at stake. And I don't know.
If you had to throw a percent on it, percent of age group, like, do you think it starts at 40 plus? That's where it's really bad, or do you think it's like, what's the hierarchy in terms of the most frequent usage?
Does anybody have any concrete evidence here, by the way, or do we not? Are we just purely speculating? I'm just curious. Okay, I was just curious if anybody knew anything that I didn't or something.
I don't know percents concrete. Do we know individual people who are or are allegedly? Of course, but I think this has changed over the years. I think right now the masters field on the men's and women's side is probably the highest doping percentage, because in normal life, the advent of anti-aging centers and youth restore centers and everything that goes along with that has become such an in vogue thing that the target population exists across the board, whether you're in a corporate boardroom or you're on a Spartan start line or a triathlon start line. Like, you are the target population for anti-aging right now. And the only industry that makes any money in anti-aging is the medical one. So that's it. It just follows logical sense. And then again, look at the start lines, that they look better than the 30 plus class.
Bracken, you have a number in mind. I know you do. If I had to put an over-under on it, I would say 65% is the over-under.
No, I think that would be disrespectful.
Way too high.
Yeah. Right. I mean, it could be as low as 10%.
All right.
I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. I feel like I know a number of genetic freaks. And when you say people don't pass the eye test, you are right. But I also know some people who lift a grape and their bicep bulges out. It's bizarre. The guy I work with, Stephen Menya, who we interviewed on our podcast, dude is the most yoked dude I've ever seen. And he'll go 3 months without touching a weight, be back at it 2 weeks. And it scares you. So there are those cases. And I think those cases also find our sport as well. But
I'd be curious on his take because of his running background. And that was a fantastic interview when he was on also. But I'm sure in the running community, he's seen some stuff.
Could ask him today.
Yeah.
All right. So speaking of doping, did you guys see that 5K at Worlds?
Smooth transition.
What are you trying to say there?
Nothing. I have nothing for. I kind of give people the benefit of doubt, but
can I interject one last time on the doping? I think we should move on after this, but I have one itch that's not been scratched yet, and I'm asking this out of pure curiosity. I'm in the fitness space. I've been training under my own name for the last 12 years, all that. So I'm in it, right? And I've also been in the endurance space very heavily throughout. If I wanted EPO, I don't even know where I would go to get it. I don't understand. Okay, I am an expert in this field, self-proclaimed anyways. I don't know where the heck I would get this. Do you guys? And I don't want to direct people to it, but like, am I the only clueless one here? Am I under a rock and I just don't get it?
I feel the same way, Kirk. I'm like, if I wanted to start, would I just like reach out to my buddy from high school who's a doctor now and be like, hey, what do you got for me? Like, I don't even know how to like administer it. Like, I don't know anything about it.
I just feel like we're making it sound so easy, right? Like, go back down any back alley and somebody can inject testosterone into your butt cheek, or we can go get EPO or some sort of form of some performance enhancing drug. And I'm sitting here being like, I've lived in this world for over a decade and I don't have a clue. I know Bracken has some insight, I believe.
So is Jack.
I was going to say, that's like when people are like, yeah, it's on the dark web. It's like, what is that? How do you get on those websites? It's like, I have the same amount of insight as you, Kirk.
Bracken, enlighten us.
Who here has smoked weed? Who here could find marijuana in the next hour if you needed to?
I live in Colorado.
Like, do you know, Kirk? Could you go find it real quick if you had to?
My life is on the line. I think I could get it in an hour, sure.
What about cocaine?
I'd take a little longer.
Maybe longer than an hour.
What about heroin?
I'm getting longer.
Probably the same.
Probably less.
But what would your process be?
Start with the weed guy.
Part of town at night.
Yeah, just go to go to
where. So that's the protocol for most people. You start with the testosterone guy. You start with the anaerobic guy, and you move from there. It's no different than the person who smokes weed and wants to try a little Molly. Like, it's the same process. The other process, because this is a little bit more widely acceptable elsewhere, would be to start online. But it's like, I think where did EPO come from? Anyone poll the room? Does anyone know the history of EPO?
I would imagine, I don't know, but I would imagine it's some sort of medical drug for someone who went through like chemo or something.
I'm going with Russia.
Fair.
I mean, for one thing, it's designed to help malaria victims. So it is blood-borne issues where people need to raise up their blood cell count because of an inability to self-regulate or because your system's been decimated. So if it exists in the medical world, you have access to it. So it's actually pretty simple. You find a pharmacy in a country that has malaria or that has any sort of non-regulation. So if you go to Mexico, you get EPO. You can get it over the counter in some third world countries because malaria is rampant. So that's one easy way to do it. But I also think we're looking at the wrong tip of the iceberg.
Bracken, we weren't actually trying to tell people how to get it. We were just trying to hypothesize.
I'm trying to show that it's
race.
not rocket science.
I'm being facetious.
Because there's two arguments. One, I wouldn't know where to get it. So if I can't, no one else can get it. Well, that's wrong because we have a hard drug issue in this country. And even if you don't know where you'd get it, millions are getting it every day. So I just want to clear that up. But the second is that people generally don't start with heroin. They smoke a little weed first and they drink a little bit first. And then they are, as Darryl taught us, they're gateway drugs, right?
Yep.
So I don't think EPO is our issue in our sport. You have to be pretty damn committed to get to EPO. But there are a lot of things along the way that would absolutely help people and that are super easy to get. And yeah, you have one buddy in the medical field. Easy.
Yeah, that's
I
what
mean, I know someone who's a doctor and he's got Botox at home, and he's got, I want to say he did plasma rich therapy injections, and he did some stem cell stuff. He did it on his own out of his little mini fridge in his house because he has total freedom of access at work. So yeah, you just know one person and that's where it starts, or your gym bro points you in the right direction. But the last guy who got popped, and I'm blanking on his name, he lived down in Arizona. He would just cross the border and go to a Mexican pharmacy, and he figured 1 in 3 was false. 1 in 3 he wouldn't get any effect from, but that was just a risk he was willing to take.
So plasma rich, is that a good nickname coming out from altitude? We could do it.
Plasma rich.
You think you like
I think
like
you should
that?
go with that.
I like it.
I think I like it too. I'll change my thing next time. So yeah, I think that makes sense. If you wanted to find it, you really could, right?
But I don't think EPO is like the age group cocktail of choice.
I don't think so either. I think that's what most people should go toward.
I suppose anybody could get like a butterfly needle somewhere and go freeze a bag and then put it back in. Go try that. See how that works out. At the most desperate
spin
sense.
it first and separate it.
Big deal. I can get a centrifuge online.
My point is, if we had one of those crazy sci-fi tell-all devices that just said everything and you scanned every person in triathlon, cycling, running, I don't think EPO would be one of the big chunks of the pie chart.
Well, my friend Andy, he was a skier in college, and then he moved out to Boulder. That's where he lives now. And he's a pro cyclist, and on EPO, he says that like he does some races in Europe and the US and stuff. And he says that basically entire teams will block off rooms in a hotel, and you can be just walking down the hall at 3 a.m. or so, and you'll just hear the whirring of the wheel, because people are trying to, do whatever to get it out of their bloodstream even in the middle of the night and stuff. And he's like, it is still super common.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't mean to change our train of thought there, Rich. I just thought we should touch on that before moving.
It's a good point. And now, Jack definitely least likely, never cheated on a test, but Bracken now, his know-how of how to get it. We had to pick who's most likely.
And listen, I just admitted I doped back in 2006. So
yeah, you're out. You already lose.
This was one of my final thesis papers in college. I wrote a very big senior project on this. Like, I've done my research, and I've continued to do so. I understand it doesn't make me look less guilty, but point to a result for me.
What'd you get on that thesis? What kind of grade you get on that paper?
They didn't understand it. That was an A. It wasn't for a sports performance exercise phys class.
Just English.
I was School of Education. God, if I'm gonna have to write 10,000 words, it's gonna be on something I'm interested in.
Yeah, School of Education. Like, thanks for doing this. You get an A.
Yeah,
go out there and teach.
Looks
everybody.
double spaced. Good job.
It all paid off for this moment to educate. You are educating. Do we want to move on?
I think we should talk some track and field.
Let's talk some track and field, Jack.
Yeah. Forget shoes and doping. Let's talk track.
Shoes. No more shoes.
Jack, what was the highlight for you for the Worlds? The Worlds just wrapped up on Sunday. I believe it's 10 days. That's a long.
Yeah.
It's a lot of viewership. So I was behind. I've caught up for the most part. Didn't see the 10K. And this is for the track and field nerds out there. If you're not checking it out yet, Bracken, I'm now a subscriber to Peacock. I didn't want the ads, so I'm premium.
I should get a kickback from Peacock.
I think a lot of people have an affiliate.
Thanks for the heads up. I got Peacock.
Yeah.
Kirk, you too. You mentioned it.
Yes, I did. Give me some.
Is there a reason to keep it, or should I cancel it now?
It'll perpetually pay off in these fringe sport situations.
They have, they show triathlon from time. I think they do. I don't remember, but they have all the Diamond League races.
You can just go search track and field on there. You'd be surprised what pops up.
Plus, they have newish movies pop up. The Northman was on there early. So was Ambulance, which didn't really do it for me, but Northman was pretty baller.
All right. Noted. I wish they had chapters. Like, YouTube has chapters now. So you can click on a link to take you to the 4x4 or whatever. I wish that was the case, because I'm doing a lot of scrubbing and kind of figuring out. But I have Peacock now, so I watched the full deal. Except 10K, so no spoilers on 10K, Jack. But what were some of your highlights here?
So I'll just lead it off. I was in Eugene at the new Hayward Field. Rich, you said that you've been at
That was
old
2012.
Hayward Field.
Mhm.
Okay. That facility is amazing. I was there for the U.S. Championships about a month ago, end of June. That I couldn't have thought. I couldn't imagine a better venue for track and field in the U.S. So the environment that I saw and all the replays and stuff, it looked pretty awesome. It wasn't amazing attendance. It was still pretty good. You saw some open seats, but overall, it looked like a great place for a small town to pull it off. But my biggest shocker was probably Karsten Warholm not getting a medal in the 400 hurdles. Like not just not winning, but not even medaling.
Dude
That
had a
was
piano on his back.
That was
He didn't look
Hunter
fit.
at High Rocks a couple of years ago, in my opinion. Like I would have bet the house that probably both 400 hurdles. It would have been like Sidney McLaughlin's got a medal and Karsten Warholm will. Those would have been the easiest bets in my opinion, and one of them completely backfired. So
I was surprised he showed up.
Yeah, hadn't he not really raced?
one race this year.
DNF.
Yeah, it was,
Right.
yeah.
So he wasn't very fit. It was like the same as Donovan Brazier in the 800.
Yep.
You know what
Guys,
it
that
is?
guy's
He's
not
surgery
fit.
now.
You're the world champ. You're getting some hefty appearance fees.
Heck yeah. So he held on for 300 and then just had nothing.
that
surprised
was
he
a
even made
piano,
the-
Kirk.
Yeah, I'm surprised he even made the finals. How bad he finished.
Well, he went out so hard. He went out in like 22 and change for 200, the open and 200 with hurdles, which is just very fast. During all the prelims, and they just kind of shut it down. And I think that because he won his heat, he got the capital Q, not the lowercase q to get in. So, but yeah, that one
right?
was pretty crazy. And then just it seemed like every single race had 2 to 5 people all clumped together. Like the women's 800, that was fantastic. Keely Hodgkinson trying to battle into the line with Athing Mo. Like that was crazy. All the 5Ks and 1500, just fantastic finishes. I was just impressed overall. It's been super fun to watch all the highlights, and they've got good announcers. I wish the track was more popular, as do we all.
Yeah, I think it's a 10-day thing spread out
Yeah.
over if they had all of the cool stuff like in an hour.
Yep.
I think that we could do
I will
that.
say, when I was there live watching the U.S. Championships, you'd see some woman throw shot put, and then as soon as that throw was done, someone would come across the field, do a triple jump, and then in the background they're running the steeplechase. Like you had nonstop action. So if you've got ADHD and you're just like trying to focus on something, good luck, because there was so much going on. I think spreading it out over 10 days versus 4 or even 7 if they were going to do a full week, that probably would have been the way to go. Shorten it a little bit, but
For what? For this?
yeah.
This was a 10-day meet.
Yeah, no, I'm saying the U.S.
U.S. championships.
Qualified, that was a 4-day, like Thursday to Sunday.
I think 4 is too short and 10 is way too long.
10's
so
incredibly
7 would
long.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's so long.
I think a 1-week festival is probably where it's at.
Yeah.
I
Now,
love
Nick-
track and field, and I'd pull it up and be like, there's only one event today I want to watch. And then I'd end up not watching it. I'll save it for later and I'll watch them all during one workout. And I love track. It was too spread. There's too many rounds.
I like to watch the rounds too because I like to know
Mhm.
who all the players are. So I'm watching I think there was 6 rounds of the 800 like on the first day it came. I was like, I'm gonna watch all of these.
Speaking of rounds, something that you never see happen in track and field, there was a world record in the women's 100 hurdles in the semifinals. Like you rarely see world records, period. But to do that, I feel like that and anything 100 meters or like it has to be that event to set a record in prelims, because no one's going to sell out any other event that's longer than that.
There's a lot of discussion on that one event online, how there's got to be something wrong with the timing system and everything. But I think it was the perfect storm how it happened. One, it's the second shortest event, which means something can pop off and happen. Second of all, it was a sport where it's predicated around technique in your steps. And so your head's down focusing on your steps for your first couple of hurdles anyways. So you're not even thinking about conserving, because if you conserve in hurdles, you're off your technique and then you get in trouble. And third, it wasn't a favorite. If a favorite gets to the front, they know how to coast in. And this girl was not a favorite. And I mean, she's very good. She was, I think, a 12.5 girl prior to this.
4th at the last Olympics and world champs. So
Yeah.
up there.
She's good enough to be legit and not yet good enough to coast. And so you got the perfect storm of she's running all the way through the line, pumped up to be in the lead. And the rest of the field has to work to try to get the qualifying spot. So it's actually one of the rare occurrences where I would say there wasn't, like, it could pass the eye test because all the perfect pieces aligned into one race.
Yeah. And her name's Toby Amusin. We haven't said it, from Nigeria.
Yep. To add on to your faulty timing equipment, I think Devin Allen also with the false start. That was a gut shot right there. See, he ran at Oregon. That sucked.
Sure. Let's explain this to the general public. What happened? There is a 0.01, correct?
No, 0.1. 1/10 of a second. You're allowed to react.
I thought it was 100th.
No, 0.1. Like if you're,
I thought it was more. I thought it was less than that too. Good.
No, every sprint it was like 0.104, 0.2. Like it's okay. That just think how much. That's a reaction
Anyways,
time. It's not
there is a built-in reaction time limiter. They don't do false starts based off of the eye test anymore. They have a machine that judges how fast from the time the gun goes off to your reaction out of the block. And there is a benchmark. If you react faster, I'm going to say 1/100th of a second, and Jack's going to say 1/10 of a second. And it doesn't really matter what it is. They did their research and decided that this is the fastest a human could react. You can't be faster than this. So if you're above it, there's no false start called. And if you're below it, there's a false start and you're out of the race. Well, he missed it. I'm going to say it was 0.01 is what you're allowed. And he was
0.0099. That was his time.
Okay. 0.099. So maybe I'm wrong about that. But the point is that he reacted 1/100th of a second faster than they said is maybe 1/1000th of a second faster than what they said was possible. But his prelim time was 0.12 or 0.11 or something like that. So he's already shown that he's capable of being really, really close to that. And what I really don't like is that this is a competition of freak outliers in nature. Like, what are the odds you could accurately predict? If we would have predicted that if you ran under 9.6, you were doping or you were cheating or you had a false start, and then Usain Bolt comes along and blows it away, or you can't run under 19.5 or 19.2 in the 200. Like, it's a sport of freak outliers. There's going to be freak outliers. And everyone now is like, we've been saying this for years. It's a bad system. It's like, well, sometimes it takes one really bad occurrence. Devin has to be the sacrificial lamb. But it was a strange situation.
The biggest thing about it when we're talking about these numbers is the visual. You could not pick it out. Like, it doesn't look like a false start.
No,
by any means. So it's just like stupid.
You know when there's a fall, like someone falls and stumbles out of their blocks or like lifts their head and everyone else's head is straight down. He went off with everybody else. He just happened to be 1/1000th of a second, which is so imperceptible, even in slow-mo.
Yeah, if you can't see it in slow motion.
No.
It's tough though. We all ask for lines to be drawn in the sand, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, what do you do in that situation? You do exactly what you did, but I'm assuming it'll get a harder look at it, just like, like Trustgate or whatever else happened back in the day. It just leads to change. And it just sucks that he's got to be the one to deal with it.
And he handled it well.
Yeah.
Just really well.
Yeah.
I would have been furious. You know how hard that is? I mean, I guess we all do. To get a mic in your face and a camera in your face at the most pressure-packed emotional moment of your entire life at a world championship. I mean, we don't even know that level. It's tough. He handled it. I was really impressed with Devin.
Try making out with a girl in front of a camera. That's even tougher.
There's some pressure.
I digress.
Take the camera away. That's tough enough for a lot of people.
Continue, Jack.
Yeah, and speaking of the equipment, it seemed there was someone who did an analysis on average reaction times at all the world championships and all the Olympics in the past, and it was just so much quicker this time. And that leads you to think, was it faulty equipment? Is the stuff so precise now versus what they used 2 to 10 years ago even, that these are the reaction times that people would have had in the past if this super sensitive equipment was out there? I think he kind of got screwed and they need to change that tolerance, because what they were showing, I believe that 0.1 seconds was just some arbitrary number that they did on some random athletes in like Norway or something a long time ago. and they were just pretty good, but not world-class athletes. And they were like, all right, anything more than that, they're just jumping the gun, and they've just used 0.1 ever since then. But there have been some studies that show it could be as low as like 0.084 or something. That's like the acceptable tolerance to prove that you're just not guessing the start gun. And I think if they used a level like that, obviously he would have been in the race and could have sailed off into the sunset potentially with a medal. So I feel bad for the guy.
And I actually think that they should promote guessing the start gun.
Yeah. Right.
Isn't that part of sport is anticipation? Think about it. If you react at the moment the gun goes off, that is the human ceiling of a perfect race. Saying that you reacted too quickly after the start gun, so you were anticipating it. That's what sprinters have done for years. Even in high school, you used to sit and get a cadence on the starter's gun. You'd watch him. He's set, arm up, 1, 2, go. So you know that you're not catching it on an exhale, or you're not catching it on, you're ready to go when you know his cadence. Like, that's part of sport. I don't like that they've mechanically taken away guessing the starter's pistol.
I saw this, I think it was a tweet or something like that. It's like, why not just do it how they do horse racing? Just put a barrier in front of them. The barrier goes up.
Yeah.
Just let them go. It's new world records, because this is bad for the sport.
It is. Think of a defensive end who's trying to fire off the end.
Right. A rebound,
They're either going to get
basketball.
an awesome jump and a sack, or they're going to get a penalty, and everyone knows that, and it makes it cool.
Yep.
It's a dumb rule.
He's gonna be fine. He's gonna be catching bombs from Jalen Hurts.
Is he going to make the Eagles?
Yeah, I don't
He was
know.
a good football player then.
The receiving core is beefed up this year. Has been pretty poor the past couple, but
For
maybe
looks
good for
alone,
PR.
you should have him on the team.
Yeah, I would
Put
love
some
to have him.
females in the stands
I know.
and some men.
For sure. So that was definitely a kind of a downside to this, and it just like I said, like, why do they try to make the sport worse? It seems like we don't get that much attention on it, and then when it is, it's negative or something like that. So what are some of the positives what are the things that we liked watching?
Sidney McLaughlin destroying everyone.
I didn't like that.
Didn't like
You
that?
didn't like that? How can you not?
Dude, 47-8 4x4 split. That's nuts.
And she's not Eastern European from the 80s. Like, it's crazy.
I think she is.
And she's 23, right? She's young. She got a couple.
I think she's
Couple
like
more years.
21.
21.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We have a crazy amount of young crop performing high level right now, don't we? Maybe it's always this way, but at least in like that 800 meter and up space in particular. And not to grab low hanging fruit with talking about Jakob Ingebrigtsen, because it's easy to talk good about him, but he came off, what was it, a world cross country title or a European champs? Which one was that he won? Worlds or Europe's?
He definitely won at least European. Maybe.
Yeah, he goes and wins that. Then he goes and wins the 1500 meters in the Olympics. And then he comes back and he loses the 1500 and follows that up by a dominant 5,000 meter win. Like, we hadn't seen him face adversity. Like, he's always risen to the occasion in the last year and a half, 2 years, right? And it was just good to see him face some adversity, make some tactical errors, in my opinion, in the 1500 meters, and then come back and do it. And then at the end of the day, his smug arrogance is like, oh, I'm just faster than everybody else and I should have won. And that's what bothered him so much about not winning the 1500, is he believes he's the best. And watching him interview is like a style of I don't know if you guys watched his post-race interviews, but he is just so damn smug. Like, I am so fit that it doesn't matter what anybody else did. I beat myself in the 1500 and nobody was going to beat me in the 5000 because they just aren't better. And I am better than them. And I wish I had a little bit of that in me, because although you can take it or leave it the way it comes off, like that little bit of arrogance is what it takes to, or confidence, we can call it, is what it takes to be as good as he is.
You see that in the sprinting world with 100 meter. They're like, nobody on the planet's faster, but you never see it in distance. So it is interesting seeing it.
But he talks it like there's a showboat with them. He just exudes, like, he's not a in your face aggressive. He answers the question. He doesn't lead with it. You know who he reminds me of is a less happy-go-lucky Ryan Atkins when he's interviewed, where Ryan rubs a few people the wrong way with his post-race comments, but he just means it. Like, listen, you weren't prepared. You all had the time. You didn't prepare. Come in with a bigger engine. be prepared for this. I knew I was super fit. Like they have some of the similar. Ryan is usually smiling and Jakob rarely is. And Jakob has a little bit more like pretty boy flair to him. And Ryan's like the rustic mountain man, but they have that same level of what are you going to do to me confidence.
When you have like, and it just was like a testament to how dialed in these guys and girls are when they asked Jakob afterwards, because I think he ran 3:29, I believe. Is that what they ran? And he said, well, like, I'm only disappointed because I know I'm better than everybody else. And I know that I can run, I'm in 3:27 shape. And I didn't just do that from the gun. I lost this race in another way. And just to go show like people splitting hairs, like thinking of themselves, like going out and mile time trialing and like these people are so dialed. Like he's upset because if he ran his race, he thinks he should have won handily and he didn't. Every single athlete is that dialed. And it was just impressed, like the way that interview came across. I was just interested to hear those words. And I imagine most athletes who won or were disappointed in their losses all had those markers dialed. Just a good reminder of what level it takes to be top in that sport.
Yeah. And you don't have to get it real wrong. This race was fun for me to watch because I'm no Nostradamus, but 400 meters in, I thought, if he loses, it's not going to shock me. Because he made it. I ran a race like that my senior year of high school. I won like 3 or 4 straight miles, and I forgot why I won the miles. And I thought I'd just win because I'm going to win. And I ran and I just burnt some matches in my middle laps doing cocky little things. Like, oh, I'm going to get ahead of you no matter what it costs, rather than wait till the next turn. And when he was running, I flashed back to that mile like, that's the feeling of someone who hasn't lost in 2 years. He just knows he wins now. He started off slow off the line, which sometimes he does, and he accelerated all the way up. But that style works when you don't get on or off the accelerator, when it's just a casual gas sip all the way up. And then he got in there and then he made an acceleration to get to the front. And then someone came up on him and he accelerated again. He burnt 2 like half matches in the first 2 laps, and he never does that. And then at the end, he just didn't have quite the kick.
I was surprised that because the guy who won, his name
Jake Whiteman.
Whiteman. Yeah, I thought his move was actually early, and he was able to hold on. It was like 250 or something like that. A really ballsy move to go that early. And Jakob's not necessarily a hard kicker, right? He's his fitness, and he could just kind of squeeze. He can squeeze the pace.
He has that reputation, but like, what did the 5K show us? He's squeezing it down because he's running 3:28.
He didn't wait until 150 in the 5K though.
He blasted the last 200.
He said he's a 5,000 meter runner who runs down to the 1,500.
Yeah,
that's what he says, which is wild. But you said something about balls, and you want to know who had the biggest balls of the whole dang thing? There's 3 women in the 1,500 meters.
Oh my god!
Talk about running with balls. And I was very impressed with Laura Muir in that. But
yes,
1,500 women's race. There were 3 women who had bigger balls than any men in the entire track meet. It was those 3 women, in my opinion. Go back and watch it. It was a showing. It's amazing.
That was such a bummer for the American women who were in it. It was Corey McGee and Sinclair Johnson who were the 2 American representatives, and it's like, okay, these women are running well, and then immediately for them to go out, would they go out in like
55?
55. I thought I was gonna say 54. Yeah,
like that's women's 1,500.
That's nuts. And so, like for their sake, it's like, well, you can imagine this race how it's gonna go, and then that happens, and you can't do anything.
Let's humanize this for people listening because it's hard to comprehend. In the women's 1,500 meters, the women went out for the first quarter mile in like 16 or 17 miles an hour on the treadmill. Wrap your head around that.
How many
miles an hour on the treadmill?
How many male OCR athletes do you think can run 54 seconds in an open 400 right now? Like 3?
I don't know. I could.
Kirk, what's your 1,500 meter PR?
352.
And mine's 357. So you'd be the favorite to win gold in any female race, and I would be in the mix for a podium at any level. What's the fastest you've ever gone out in a 1,500 or a mile?
59.
Yeah,
mine was 60.5 or 61. They went out 6 seconds faster than my fastest, and I'm faster than 90% of them, or was at one point. And I've never gone within 6 seconds of their first lap. Dude. That's, I mean, what's 55 times 4?
340
mile.
I think they went out faster or as fast as the men. They might have went out
faster
than the men did in their first quarter.
Yeah, so
Ball.
340 mile would break the mile record by 3 seconds for the men from the EPO era. That's
Dude. And they hung on to a respectable pace.
And you guys would not have run 352 or 357, whatever your PRs are, if you went out in 55. Guarantee you that.
No.
That's crazy to go out in 800 in for most people.
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe 59, because I think I came through at 201 and a half, 201.5. So I think I went 59.62.
Did that
But
race
still,
go terrible?
What'd you go
Yeah.
after that, Brad?
Was that a horrible race for you?
It was a 358. I kind of did what they did. I hung on the best I can, but they went out 5 seconds faster.
Yeah.
And they're female, and I'm a male.
Did you guys ever see
I had the benefit
Daniel
of testosterone
Komen break
growing up.
1300.
Did you ever see Daniel Komen break the 2-mile world record? There's some video on like a crappy track in Kenya, and the same deal. He goes out in like 55 or something for a 2-mile, and the announcers are like laughing, and that's what it reminded me of. Just it's like they can do it, but this is just foolish to watch.
I thought even though Laura Muir, would she take third, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like she typically ends up like getting into position and then somehow just not, I don't know, finishing to her potential. I feel like it's been a series of disappointments for her, and to watch her like, I don't know, go out and just say, I'm going to die on this train. And she got on it and she ended up hanging on. I don't know why. I have no personal investment in her, but I was proud for her to hang on to a podium position.
She did win silver at the Olympics though in the 15.
Mm-hmm.
So
this last year?
Yeah.
Oh, well, never mind.
She's the classic best of the rest. She smokes every field she's in, but against the absolute freaks of the freaks, she doesn't have that finishing, just snappy kick at the end that some of them do. She's so good. She's just like one kick away.
And yeah, the two women, it was Faith Kipyegon and Guda Sagai, who ended up winning the 5K. She had this similar podium. She had the same podium finish as Jakob Ingebrigtsen.
Yeah, and that 5K for the women, you had 14:46.3 to 14:48 basically. You had 5 or 6 women within a second and a half. Like it was such a cluster with how many of them were right there. And
that 5K you're saying?
Son didn't even make it.
Yeah, that was
She
a
got
crazy
6th.
finish too.
Yeah.
It's crazy where female distance running has gone, where 14:46 is a tactical 5K now.
Right. These women are getting really fast.
They're consistently running 14 high teens, 14:15, 14:17 in Diamond League meets. This is 30 seconds slow for them. Like that's 14:40s is now 30 seconds off PR pace for like 5 women in the field. That's wild.
Mm-hmm. We were speculating before we started recording, and we should have stopped ourselves. But let's speculate on Grant Fisher, 5K, final turn, stumbles over the rail, ends up losing his momentum. What do you guys think would have happened there?
I think he takes
Third.
4th.
I thought
he was
4th
hanging on for medal.
4th. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, he looked like he had run in him.
He looked great.
So to me, he is the pre-peak of his career Galen Rupp right now. There's even a similarity in stride where they're vertical runners. They run very erect upper body and they go up, down with their feet. And then Galen started training with Mo Farah, and Salazar went in with those 3 on his like crazy master plan of develop championship finishing in races. And I think that's where Grant Fisher's at right now, where he's now run sub 1250 in a 5K. He has the engine to compete at the world level. And he's just like Laura Muir, 1 ounce of a kick behind everyone else. He's shown he can close now. He closed in like 157 at US trials, but he needs to be able to close in that off of a 13-minute pace now. So I feel like he's so close, and he's going to have championship medals, but he now needs that like 2-year sharpening process to be ready for the next big championship.
He's really progressed as an athlete too, hasn't he? Since like his college days, like his improvement has been pretty impressive. Like, I don't know, maybe you would have picked him out years ago, but I wouldn't necessarily be like, he is our guy that all the lights are on now in the 5K or maybe the 10K. And I see you have an opinion on that, but he was one in the mix, but I wouldn't have singled him out to be maybe the one who had risen to the top. He's just kept at it. That's just my take.
He was a high school stand.
So
He was
cool.
In high school, of course.
He was a phenom, but then you're right, Kirk, his first couple of years of college, like, well, maybe he was just one of those. He did a big volume in high school, but so he's living up to his high school hype now. But you rarely see a dip and come back. You think of German Fernandez or Lucas Verzbickas, people like that who were phenoms, and that was their peak. He's now getting back to it after a little lull where he had some growing pains, and that's cool to see him stick with it.
Yeah, for sure. He's like what Nico Young might be, because he's not dominating the way he is, but how dominant he was in high school. If he came out, like we might just forget that it's not
similar
this linear
runners.
Path. Yeah.
Because he was a 13.32 in college. You wouldn't have I agree with you on that, Kirk, where it's like very, very good, but that's a stud performance or improvement right there.
To go 13.32 to 12.50. I mean, at that level,
I think
that 12.48. Well, roughly
26.33. That's his 10K. Like
what point? That's an astronomical improvement if you ask me. Post collegiately, when you're already running that fast, it's not a ton if you're running a 30-minute 5K. Okay, what's 40 seconds? When you're running that fast, that's a lot.
We talked in our last episode a little bit about what people miss out on if they don't run high school and college. We say it's not a death knell for you as an athlete, but you miss out on learning how to race a million different times. And that to me is what was highlighted with training groups. We had the Bowerman Track Club, which is notorious for, since COVID, time trialing or setting up races where it's just 2 or 3 teammates in wave light. And they've all run really fast, but nobody medaled from it. Now, it's too easy to jump on that bandwagon and say that's what's wrong, but they were the least sharp racing tactics, and they were the least successful in the finals in terms of medals. Like, is there some piece to that where if you haven't been in a cluster with 200 to go a few times in a season, are you ready to make like a Centrowitz type move down the backstretch, like a real savvy racing move and snake your way in? I think there's some merit to it.
Well, Joshua Chup, the guy who benefited from all the wave light technology to set a world record, he did win the 10K.
He also raced Diamond League a bunch, though.
That's true.
Like, he used wave light, but he also mixed it up in races and lost a bunch. I think we might have forgotten how much he and Chip Limo were starting to be talked about as overrated because they kept losing, and then championship, they were ready for what it took.
Nothing wrong. The Grant Fisher, he was at Stanford. Is that where he went?
Stanford.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes I think that these high school phenoms are better off not going to college. You know, I think we all have our opinions about the system. Like, what if he just came out and was a pro runner right away?
How about like Drew Hunter? That didn't really work out for him as much.
It's just a different.
It's hindsight.
It is definitely hindsight, and that's just kind of the system that we have.
Like, say that you were what's his name, Solomon. Like, what if you were him from Newbury Park? Would you go to college? I think he's going to NAU, right? Like,
I think you have to have long-term development plans either way. I don't think there's any use going to college and jumping from 40 miles to 90 miles. I also don't think there's any sense turning pro and living like a pro immediately. I think, like, I don't want to give the Ingebrigtsens too much of like, this is the golden ticket, but there was a ladder that they set up, and it started at 7 years old and it got here to the Olympics and a world record. Like, this was the progression. It wasn't this. There was one trajectory, and it was going to be kept regardless of what placement was along the way. And so I think there are times when pro makes sense and there's times where college makes sense, but it has to be in a program that is beneficial to the sequential events that need to happen. Like, they have to fall into place either way.
One more guy on that, Ariane Knighton, the high school 200 phenom right there. He went pro, right?
Yeah.
He's got to go pro.
But he was like 4th in the Olympics or 5th. Like, that right there is a different level. And sprinting's a little bit different than distance in terms of, I imagine, the development curve. But
fast twitch versus slow twitch, I can't even, like Vashti Cunningham.
The high jumper.
She went right out. Randall Cunningham's daughter. She went pro right out of high school. But fast twitch, all you get right into is skill refinement. Like, go pro. You can spend all day long working on skills and drills, but going pro as a distance runner has just as many pitfall potentials as it does launch yourself up potentials.
I would imagine, like, I guess where that you cross that line between fast twitch and slow twitch is like that 400, 800. So someone like Afeng Mo, who didn't need to go to college. She did go, but for a year, right?
Yeah.
Like she didn't need to be there. I think like the 800 meter runners in particular too.
And she also set the college 400 record, which is like just insane.
How did she not make the 4x4? Is our 4x4 that nasty, or is she not that fast?
They destroyed everyone in that.
Yeah.
She ran the Olympics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
but Abby Steiner came in and ran as an alternate, which great range. She had a great meet. She was on the 4x1 gold and 4x4 gold, and was like 5th in the 200.
That's actually like some wild range, isn't it? 100 to 400 is range people don't talk about. That's a rare range right there.
Put her in the 800. That's what I always say.
Fred Curley can do it, or could. But
I'm asking this next thing out of selfish curiosity, but I just didn't pay attention to these two humans, and I feel like I'm oddly invested in both Cooper Tier and Cole Hawker. Do we know what happened to both of them specifically? Because we've talked about them a lot on the podcast, Bracken, and I didn't follow up. I saw there were storylines for both, because Cooper Tier won the 1500 at U.S. trials, and then Cole Hawker was head disappointed. What's going on with those two guys? Because I love watching them race, and I didn't get to see them out there in the final anyways, and that was disappointing. Who knows what's going on with
Cole missed a couple weeks and didn't talk about it till afterwards, but his teammates and people knew about it. Missed a couple weeks with a rear chain. I don't know if it was hammy or calf or whatever. And he said he just was missing out on that final few weeks of training to be ready to handle the rounds and be there for a kick at the end. But I haven't heard much, but I think Tier just got outclassed.
That it was.
I think so.
341, and that's not going to get you in at this level.
It seems like a short event for him. I know he's good. I mean, he obviously won USAs in where we don't necessarily have a stud with the vacuum that Centroids has left the past couple of years. But it seems like an odd choice to me. I thought he would be more likely to do the 5K.
What is his PR in the 15? Cooper Tier?
Cooper Tier?
37?
34, I thought.
Oh, he's run 34. Okay.
He ran 350 indoor in a mile. He's gotten the better of Cole like 7 out of the last 8 1,500 or mile races. I think he was projected as the 5K guy coming out, but he had success there. And I think he looked up at the 5K, and I would have probably said the same thing. Like, you got Chalimo, you've got Grant Fisher, you've got Woody Kincaid. Like, do you think you're going to outkick any of them with 4 to go? Can you guarantee with 400 to go that you're going to beat them? I don't think you can, but in the 1500, it's so wide open. And if you've got 350 indoor speed and you've been beating Cole Hawker, like, you might as well go for that.
I was secretly rooting for him. And then St. Pierre as well. I don't know what happened with her, but those are my curiosity, like the itches I needed scratched. What happened with her, guys? Do you know?
I didn't watch the rounds of the 1500 because it was all.
Either did I.
I fell behind and the finals were happening. I got pressured to watch the finals without watching the 1500.
Yeah,
I think we've probably all been in this point where everyone in the heat is thinking what you're thinking. You're all preparing to just move out and make your like, I'm going to run as easy as possible and then kick in and it's going to be fine. But everyone else is doing that. And if they get the jump on you, it like stalls your engine for 1/2 of a second and you just like instantly go into, oh shoot mode. And kicking not relaxed is not the same. And for anyone who's never run a middle distance race, it's hard to wrap your head around. It took me 4 years of college. My 5th year, I figured out how to run fast and relax, but kicking is not sprinting. It's really not. It's like you watched, I want to say Whiteman beat Ingebrigtsen, and it didn't look like he was sprinting. He was keeping relaxed and smooth, but your fastest kick is your relaxed kick. And when you go into oh shoot mode, it like you tense too quick and you burn through your energy. And against world-class people, even if you're a little better, I think we've all been in that spot at the end of a trial and you don't get through and you're like, what in the world just happened? I'm better than these people. And they all outkicked me.
It doesn't look like she got out kicked. I mean, the winner of her.
Yeah, I think she got just outworked, right?
She ran 409 and the winner was 401. The last qualifier was 404.
Yeah, she was 11th in that heat.
She got dropped when the lap started. Like when the kicking, when it ramped up, suddenly she was just like, it's gone.
She didn't seem as sharp in the past couple. I think I watched her run indoor as well. Yeah, she didn't look good in the U.S. champs either, where she's been pretty dominant the past couple of years. So I don't know.
Yeah,
I think it's underrated how easy the good people make rounds look. I think they're a very difficult thing to get through. Anyone who's had to run prelims at a nationals competition or at a conference competition even will know that it's hard to get up for a prelim when you're supposed to be in the final. And it's easy to get up for it when you're not supposed to make the final. So you get everyone's best effort as you're trying to coast through. And if there's anything going on with you, the prelims become this unexpectedly difficult roadblock because the studs make it look so easy to coast through. And it's really not.
That's why you also see some people really fall off the back end hard in some of these finals, because they're the ones who weren't supposed to make it and they had the race of their life to qualify. And then they come back 2-3 days later and their matches were already burnt, and then they're just happy to be there. So you'll see that. You're like, why is that woman? How did she make it there? She should be in the final. Well, she earned it, but unfortunately she had to sell out in order to get there. And so you'll also often see some people fall off the back that seem surprising, but it's because of that very scenario.
Totally.
Switching gears real quick. Do you think, or kind of backtracking, do you think Cooper Tier, since we kind of talked like there was an opening 1500, but he got outclassed at the world level, 5K, so stacked. Does he do an Evan Jagger and learn how to hurdle?
He looks too goofy for that.
He might be too goofy. Yeah.
I think Hawker could steeple.
He probably could.
He's so good at like little water bugging, skitting up, skitting back. He seems to me like a little grinder. He could do that, but I don't know. I think that oftentimes you see this happen. We saw it with Clayton Murphy. You have an event, something goes wrong. He didn't make finals. He switched to the 800 and then suddenly goes or was it vice versa?
Yeah.
And he makes bronze at the Olympics. Like sometimes shifting events gives you a false peak. And you may never attain that again. And we saw that with Murphy. He worked and worked and worked, and he's never really gotten back to that year. Like the stars align because you weren't thinking about it, but you were preparing for a different event, and you bring a more well-rounded fitness to it. And then you sharpen and pop and pop and pop, and then the magic runs out. I wonder if we're going to see a tier of like, all right, it was a good run at the mile. I'm going to move back to the 5 and then be nasty there for a bit. And you might see him yo-yo again or two because he's only like 23. But sometimes we've talked about it before, Kirk, that switching events is like a magic elixir for a short amount of time.
Especially racing down. I feel like racing down always spurs my longer racing. I could be wrong, but for me, it always was. You want to run a fast 1500? Go suffer through a few 800s first.
Yeah.
Speaking of switching events, Sydney McLaughlin, her interview, she hinted that she was done with the 400 hurdles, might be giving a new event a try, which I'm assuming would just be the open for
800.
That would be exciting to see her go after it.
I always want the 400 runners to go up, go to the 800, see what she can do.
Someone made a really good point online about that, which was at some point in her late single digits or early teens, someone most likely made the decision for her that she was a hurdler. You see that with steeplechase. A lot of times it's not your decision. Someone throws you in it. And she's developed into so much speed that someone made the point, what if it isn't her best event? She's just the best person to have tried the event.
Yeah.
Like she might be nastier at the 4. We've seen Carson not be great at 4s. No. He's actually more efficient. He's like a VJ. He recharges over the hurdles rather than it dinging him. She might be faster in the 4.
Yeah,
I'd love to see it.
Like Karsten, was it a 46.2 for his 400 hurdles world record? You're like, okay, he can shave off 3 seconds going over 10 hurdles. Piece of cake. It wasn't the case. It was only like a second and a half. I think it was less than 2 seconds.
It's like 45.9 or something like that. That's
crazy.
Yeah.
Or Sydney, I mean, just her split. I mean, we can't use splits for like your PRs or whatever you're capable of, but going 50, what was 0.4? What was her record in the hurdles?
50.6.
Yep.
And then running a 47.8 split. It's like, okay, there's some speed here.
Alone too.
She'd win most state open 400 men's boys.
Yeah. I guess speaking of 400, I think that the mixed 4x4, which was the opening event, I think that's the most exciting. If I could watch one single event at the entire games, just the strategy going at it, I think that's the most exciting.
Now, how was their strategy? Didn't you have to go male, female, male, female?
No, that's what you elect. You've seen it in the past where you'll have alternating legs where you'll send a woman out and she'll run a 51, and then the first guy will run like a 44, and then the next leg the genders are switched for some teams, and then suddenly the gap will close or get caught up. And it's a lot of strategy. I think in general, you probably want a guy as the anchor just due to the pure like flat top end speed that you can have when you need to really close in. But it's an interesting dynamic on like which leg to send out when.
I don't like it.
I like it.
I don't know why.
When is it?
I
When
want
did it
to.
start? Is
I
it?
want to. I just can't. It doesn't move the needle for me.
It
I'd rather
started
just
in the
watch the women run
Bahamas.
4x4.
Yeah. They had it
Like,
at
do a
the
DMR
World
in there.
Relay Games a few years ago. That was when it started.
Like I'd much rather see a 4x8 or like a
Really?
DMR or something. Yeah.
Did we
Yeah.
see it? So it was a woman who was anchoring for the team and they were in first. I don't remember how it ended, but and a man just blew by her in the final 100, right?
Some blonde girl from Poland. That one. Yeah.
Was
was
way
in-
out front and just that gap got eaten up and then a dude blew by her just like she was standing still.
Yeah,
and that was it.
It doesn't feel
was
good to either side
High
to me.
scores.
I mean, there was a little bit of that, but it's also like you really don't know how it's going to play out until it plays out. And that's kind of exciting, right?
I understand why. Like, I think it should be exciting. I just don't enjoy it. I watch World Cross every year in European Cross, and they do their mixed relay. It's the one I find myself on the treadmill zoning out during because I just can't find myself caring about it, and I don't know why.
You're a former mixed relay world champion. Like you don't like it.
Yeah, Bracken.
Listen,
Get off
I don't
my
even
lawn.
know if I count that as a real world championship.
Tiffany Palmer, are you listening?
Tiffany carried us. It's
Who
not a
else
shot
was
at
on
the
it?
men or the women. It's that maybe it's the thing that you like so much is you don't know how it's going to shake out is the thing I don't like, in that you can't accurately really stack it up so that you're going to get the best performance out of both sides. Half the time the woman comes in with such a big lead that the guy runs alone, or the guy comes in with such a big lead because that the woman runs alone. It's because you don't get the two best of both genders. You get the best of who's willing to run the oddball event. And I don't know.
Yeah.
Like the year we won, it was an awesome competition. I was so proud of Tiff and Brian and I, but we didn't race the three other best people there. We raced the three people who were willing to show up and run a day 2 world mixed co-ed championship. So,
Netherlands brought that. Their team was
Yeah.
stacked. They had the hurdler and the girl who got 4th in the open 4th.
Femke Bol.
Femke Bol, and I forget the 400
Yeah,
open. I'm
but-
sorry.
But just to add on like the unpredictability, you liked how the women's 1500 was unpredictable with that crazy start. Sometimes you'll see a
I like
28-minute
unpredictability. I like all the best people going against the best people, I think is what my issue is.
So if
That's
Sydney
fair.
McLaughlin
Mhm.
and Michael Norman, if they were in that event, you'd be okay with it. But because it's kind of the B squad,
Yeah, I think it'd be awesome, but I'd like to see it not staggered weird. Like as a guy, do you want to be closing on a woman or a man the last 100? As a woman, do you want to be running against a woman or a man at the end? Like, do you want to get
Whatever-
gobbled up
whatever
from
to
10
win.
seconds down by a guy, or do you want to get the stick next to a female and work to the end?
They all kind of had the same cadence in the final. I didn't watch the heats, but the final
Yeah.
was all the
Mhm.
same.
I think it's more they figured out what some bad strategies were in the past, and they're like, we're not doing that again.
All right.
I think it. I think
I'm
it's
probably
fun to watch.
wrong.
And
I'm just saying
Yeah.
it doesn't get me turned on.
So, any others? I have one more last thing that I need you guys' help with. Is there anything else? Any other notable world track and field things you want to talk about?
It's cemented for me that if I could only watch 3 events, I'm watching the 1500, the 5K, and the marathon. Those are the 3 that move my needle. And I thought I was crazy about the marathon last time. That maybe I was just in awe of some greatness or whatever. But no, every championship, I like watching the marathon more than the 10K, more than I would dare say the 800 at this point, more than the 4x4.
And I will say the 20 to 30 minute sort of palpable version of it was pretty well done. Like if you don't want to sit there for 2.5 hours, they did a good job putting together a 20 to 30 minute spot, which you followed the story and it kind of let it unfold for you so you understood it. So I agree with that.
Okay,
You're
so
just trying to
Bracken-
maximize time. You're just looking at it from a volume perspective.
100%.
5K, 10K marathon. Either way.
And I look at it like the old country buffet of the world. Like I get to sit there for hours and get as much as I want. And run down. I love it.
Breakfast and lunch.
Yeah.
So Bracken listed his 3. Rich, what 3 would you want to watch if you could only choose 3?
5K, 1500, and probably 4x4.
Exact same. as
Love
me.
that 4x4.
Yeah.
If it was a 4x8, I'd be more interested.
Mm.
You're right though, Bracken. With 800, it's just always the same. Like there's never that much. Like a thing Mo is amazing to watch because she's so dominant that she can do it however she wants. But generally, it's like
I'd watch a David Rudisha style one where wire to wire.
Yeah.
That's just who's got
But
guts.
to me, it's the first round knockout. It's spectacular, but it's like, man, I waited a long time for that, and it's over.
Yeah. Marathon, however.
Kirk, what are your 3?
Oh, I'm not veering very much from your guys' thoughts. 1,500, 5K, and then I'm a big steeple fan.
Yep.
I think the tactics in the steeple, there's always something going on. It's typically a late push that always wins, but people do drive it out from the front sometimes. You need to run that with guts, but you also need to be a tactician, and sometimes it can take just one or the other. And so you always are holding your breath during that race. And as much the 4x4 is a close honorable mention, but I'm going to go steeple.
Good call
Steeple's
with the
4th
steeple.
for me. 4x4 would be 5th, then 800.
Wow.
I want cross country though. I say we get rid of the 10K and add in cross country.
To a track and field championships. I guess they have the marathon.
That
so
puts the field
who
in
am
it.
I?
You finish
Yeah,
on the
marathon.
track.
It puts the field in it, sure.
If we have race walk and marathon, I think I would put cross country during track season in lieu of the 10K.
Okay.
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
One last thing we didn't mention: Mondo Duplantis set the world record in the pole vault, so shout out to him. We knew it was
Least
coming.
favorite.
Joe Krauser got his first world championship. Olympic champion, world record holder, never won a world championship, and he finally got it.
Mhm.
What is he jumping for the pole vault? How high are we going these days?
20'6". Just
20'6".
Jesus.
let's pretend you want to get onto the roof of your house. That's how high he's getting up there.
That's craziness.
Higher than that.
Yeah, it's true.
Mm-hmm.
Kirk's on a ranch.
Yeah, smash to the roof. Yeah.
So if we have time, I was just going to ask you, because there is a DECA fit this weekend, and Ryan Kent and I were going to team up after we go head to head, and we're going to do a relay at the end. And this relay is actually kind of interesting. We're back in OCR, back in the hybrid space. Nice job with the track and field talk. I think we did well. I don't know if anyone's going to like it.
If
But-
anything, it should tell them to go watch that stuff. Who cares if you're consuming with OCR? Like, go watch track and field. It is amazing. That's all. If
Peacock.
anybody gets that out of it, that's all you need. YouTube has everything's thrown up on NBC Sports. Most of the highlights on YouTube.
Yeah.
Go watch.
When I was in Eugene with my girlfriend and her sister and her sister's husband, none of them run, none of them like track and field. They all left it saying it was unbelievable to watch in person. So track, give it a shot.
And they're
You
never
know
going to watch ever again.
You know what I've gotten out of watching NASCAR with my son now for like 7 straight weeks? Racing is racing. It is the same storyline. Everything. I used to think of that. Who would watch that? There are tactics on every lap that you get caught up in the nuances of anything. I could be watching horses, cars run. It's the same thing. Racing is racing. If you like OCR, you're going to like track.
And then they drink Miller, not Bud Heavy. That's what we've learned.
I think it all goes down.
It goes down. So we're doing this relay. How should we break this thing up? Because in DECA, you can do it any way that you want. You can split up like the 250s and handoff. Jack, have you done a DECA relay?
That was probably the most pain I've ever been in a race. I'm dead serious. It hurts so much. Like
Well, that doesn't
500
sound good.
legs. Yeah.
Can't you split it though? Can't you do 250s?
Yeah, no, we did that for some of it, and then 500 legs is what it is. You're gonna be in the pain cave as deep as you've ever been in this thing.
So speaking of strategy, because we haven't, what do you think is ideal? Like, what do you think is optimal for a DECA fit relay strategy?
Well, you have to run first and last completely together.
Mhm.
At the beginning, you're not going to be that taxed going into lunges. I would say almost push it a little harder at the beginning, just because someone's going to be sitting on the sidelines for 40 seconds while you're going into lunges. And then that fresh person just run the 500 of your life, have the other person get right on the rower. You're not going to switch out of the rower. So first couple, you'll probably do 500s each. And then I'd go 250s for a bit in the middle.
What do you mean by 250s? You're going to switch each lap?
You can do that.
Yeah. Like if you want to do sit-ups and just, somebody runs a or 40 second 250 or something, and then you trade off for the next person. That's probably going to be
there's a
faster than
baton.
one person sticking 500 the whole time.
So how does it work if you get off the run and you're just sitting there waiting to do your sit-ups? Somebody has to just You got to slap hands. What's the rule?
You have a baton in a relay passing.
But even if you're like doing sit-ups, like what, you just got to grab it, set it next to you?
Hand it to the next person. You go.
I think so, Kirk. Yeah, I think like you just like tag them in.
Acknowledge you have grabbed it and set it down and go.
That you're doing the work. Yeah.
You get one of these. You get like a relay baton, and you physically pass it off. It's really cool to do.
How's that work for farmers, Gary?
You could switch the way you can switch.
I mean, where do you carry
Hyrox.
it?
Compression shorts, Bracken.
Good question, Bracken. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the person, if I remember right, the person who's not doing the movement just has to be within the timing mat zone of it.
I'm saying who's holding the baton when they're doing farmer's carry?
The person who's not doing farmer's carry.
So it's a reverse pass of the baton?
A reverse relay.
I imagine for that one, it's you run up, you tag them on the shoulder, and then you're going to trade off if they decide to run next. Or if you're running again, you just hang on to it. Yeah.
Rich, I would be very interested to have you guys totally split it.
Me too.
Go out in control, fast but in control on the 500, and then let him do every station, and you just put on your vapors and you hammer every single run, because you're going to be able to run 440 pace or under for every single 500. But if you have to do any amount of work in between, you're immediately going to drop to 5:10 pace. You're going to lose 30 seconds per pace per run.
How is that not the best strategy? Just hands down.
Because Kent can do the work.
Yeah.
And there's some stations that are negligible for him to do that I think that would make up more time on the row or the ski and the assault bike. And how would it be better if we didn't do 250s? If I'm running 430 pace?
Well, because then he's going to have to run and do work.
So I think where it'd be that I would do the easy stations, like the
sit-ups,
like maybe like the sit-ups or like the step overs and the lunges, things that aren't taxing. And then coming out, he would do like farmer's carry. And then I would do that full 500. So he could have full time to recover for assault bike. And then I would do the full 500 after the assault bike. And then we would split the tank. And then I would finish, or whoever, or then we would split the 250s at the end, or whoever was feeling more taxed. I think there should be spots where I take the full 500, or he even takes the full 500 in some points, and do 250s early, and then later, then kind of use the 500.
Yeah,
I'd be interested to do it 3 times: one with 500s and split, one with 250s in spots, and then your third where you try like your very best mix of that. But I think the first time I would try to split everything and see how bad it is, unless you really think like it doesn't make any sense to do the full tank by myself, even though I'm going to be getting 70 seconds rest in between.
Victor Quesada and Derek Yorick. Yorick is a phenomenal runner. Victor's kind of just a jack of all trades. They split it up 250s. They did, and they hold the fastest time. And you'd think with Derek as a phenomenal runner, just let him do all the 500s, and that they found that was not the best way to go.
But neither of them are Kent or Rich on either the run or the stations, right?
Yeah, their station work will probably be a little bit slower.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Kent does what he calls high rocks heavy, and I'm sure he does it for his Deca too, where he'll just do the full high rocks with no runs every once in a while to just get a nasty effort. But now you give him 70-second rest in between each station. I think you could each crank individually harder. I understand the 250 thing. Someone has to go right from 250 and then another 250, and then someone does the station and then the other person does the 250. But now I feel like you get behind the 8 ball. Like someone's always going to be a little bit less recovered.
Yeah. Rich, for you, how fast do you think you could do 10 by 500 right now?
I don't know, because the rest would be varied, right?
It's variable rest also.
Because it'd be like 30 seconds on a couple. Yeah.
But you're going to get over a minute on some.
Yeah.
For sure. Closer to 2. I don't know.
If you couldn't run 10 by 4, let's say 60-second average, 10 by 400 with 60 seconds, you'd be under 70 for each one.
Under 70, maybe. It's pretty fast.
If you were racing the workout, you would be.
Yeah, maybe.
And don't forget, he's already run DecaFit earlier in the day, so stay mobile.
No problem.
Yeah.
So my take is, are 250s that much easier than 500s if you add in a little bit of work?
I would still think so.
Okay. Well, then what's your strategy?
Well, that's what I was kind of thinking, like we'd start together, then I would do step overs, and then he would do 250, I would do 250, he would row. Or however that would work. And then I would do 250 and then pass to him for 250, and then I would do the step overs. And then he could do 250, I could do 250. He does all the sit-ups. I do 500. He does the ski, the full ski. Then I do the 500, and then he does the farmer's walk. So I guess I am doing a lot of 500s anyway.
Yeah.
And then because I just want to spare him for the station work. But then on stuff that he doesn't have to do.
I'd be curious if you just blasted 250 on the ski erg and then traded off to the other person to do that.
He might switch.
Ski, you should switch.
Even if I do 200 and he does.
If you're going to do any switching, ski's one to switch.
He's the one to switch for sure.
And same as ram burpees at the end. Someone's going to get 30 seconds of rest for the first 10 or so. I'd trade off there. That's what Preston and I did, and he saved us.
Okay, if you're going to do 250s, I would switch twice on the ski.
Yes.
I would go 150, 150, and then whoever is running hop off while that person does the last, well, whatever that be, 250 or whatever, or 200 or whatever it's going to be. But if you get to do the CrossFit style switch where one person goes on, they take one hand off, you put a hand on, and then you put your hand over theirs and go, you never lose a single watt on the entire thing. If you're allowed to do CrossFit standard ski erg switches.
Depends on the baton. Who's holding the baton, Jack?
Put it in your pocket.
Put it in your pocket.
You have to have a naked belt or something.
Yeah, a spy belt. All right. Well, that was not that helpful, but I appreciate you guys chiming in on that.
Anything else? You and I did it. How would we do it?
Ooh, good question.
Because we will at some point.
You could do it this weekend, but Kurt's.
It's a good. Well, Bracken has like a hernia. You recall?
He's recovering.
I might come down and watch. Lisa and I might come down.
Come hang out. We'll be there all day.
I don't know. I'd have to think about it. I honestly, what I would love to do if I were to do it is I would have to schedule a couple and I'd do a baseline. We'd pick a runner. We'd pick a station. We'd do a baseline. That would be what I would call the baseline. And then we would scheme and see how that goes. Yeah. And then you'd nail it on your third one. I think that's how it would have to go if you're going to do your best time. I like the simplicity of, other than maybe the ski erg.
You and I would be different though, because we're not like clearly a runner and a powerhouse.
Correct. But I still like a base. I don't know why, but I think the baseline
sure.
would be super helpful in that regard with like the clear separation between run and stations. And then from there, deciding where you need to fluctuate with the nuances.
Rich, who's making the podium? It's you, Ryan Kent, Glenn Race, Nick Riker, Mark Polzin. He's sneaky underrated. You've got 5 names who could easily do it.
What did Riker's comment, Rick Ryan has totally disappeared, mean on Instagram?
I don't know what he was talking about like that. With that,
have you stopped talking to the Torque guys? What's going on?
I'm gonna stop talking to Riker.
I think he deserves that.
I think he deserves that.
How about Rylan? I wish Rylan would show up.
Yeah,
those are really elite times.
Really elite.
Yeah. Really elite times. I would love to know what I'm sure he crushed the bike. I would love to know what his row and ski were.
He looked on the machines like he was moving watts.
Because, I mean, not far off of what Kent does on either of those. Being under 12 and a strong is very impressive.
His bike form just looked like a guy who spent time on a bike.
Yeah.
Didn't look like a OCR guy flailing away. He looked like a CrossFitter biking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd love to get him out to Chicago. Get him out and see.
And then in the women's race, you've got Bethany McChesney teaming up with what's her name, Laney, the Olympic runner. They're going to go after the relay record there. That's going to get set. And then Laura Cummings is running. Tara Jackson is on the list. Ashley Heller, Morgan Schultz. So you've got a good battle on the women's side as well.
If Morgan's fit, like this is going to be her thing.
Yeah, and Camilla.
Oh, she is? Camilla Massa?
Yeah, Camilla Massa from
nice.
High Rocks. Yep.
Oh, great. Let me see how she would do. The women's race is going to be good.
Yeah. It is. People are buying in, and then Palm Beach is going to be more stacked.
So tune in to TechFit. Don't know where that's going to be shown, if at all, but we'll talk about it next week. Cool. Anything else? I got to work on these transitions, the exiting transitions.
Okay, dudes.
That's like the Looney Tunes. That's it.
All right.
Is that the Rich Ryan go-to? All
All right, dudes. That's it. We're out of here.